Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another thrilling, exciting episode of Inside Movies Galore. I'm your host, David Straggy, but I'm going to take you over to our real host for tonight.
Yeah, I'm the host today. So, everybody, this is the Crypt of Horrors, or Justin, or whatever these guys are going to call me. So, tonight's episode was my pick for the Movies We're Thankful For theme, which I interpreted it as, just favorite movies. So, my pick is something that's always been really special to me. The 1989 Universal production Tremors, which is probably one of the best monster movies available out there. It is so awesome, and I can't wait to talk about it. So usually on my episodes we do a scene by scene, okay, this happened, then this happened, and just talk about it like that. But one of the fun things about this movie is it doesn't really have a slow moment. Every scene is like that and memorable. So I think we'd probably be here way too long if we did it that way. So because I don't want to be the only person talking this entire time, because I could do it, I'm going to try to let you guys sort of pick out scenes, in order that you want to talk about.
Sounds sexy to me.
So, with that in mind, we are going to spoil the hell out of this movie. And if you haven't seen it, first of all, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, you already did something wrong with your life.
Yeah, are you living in the gutter or something? Wow, aggressive. We are aggressive today. But, well, obviously, so, we're going to be spoiling, the plot and everything. So if you haven't seen this movie, drop what you're doing and go see it. You will not regret it. I cannot conceive of a person that the idea that somebody could not like this movie is unthinkable to me.
Yeah, it's got enough for everyone that I would think anybody from any perspective could come into it and get at least a few laughs out of it or be genuinely scared,
This movie does have a really good balance of genuinely scary, oof, oh my god, and also sort of funny. There's been this debate about PG-13 horror movies recently all over Twitter. Is that me?
That's
Me?
Yeah.
Somebody's putting sandpaper on their mic or something. But anyway, so there's been a debate about, can PG-13 horror movies really be scary? That's been kind of happening all over Twitter with the announcement of the new Black Christmas being PG-13.
Right.
And, Tremors, this movie is PG-13. And, a lot of the moments are still pretty scary. I saw this movie when I was really young. I think I saw it on TV when I was 5 or 6. We are not kidding when we say really young. And it still works on me.
Yeah, it's claustrophobic, dude. There's there's death scenes in this that bother me still more than way more explicit stuff. Crazy movies.
Exactly.
I have one thing. Is it 1989 or is it 1990? Because IMDb shows it as 1990.
It's interesting. So I've seen it listed as 89 or 90.
Yeah.
So because if you look at release information, it says 1990. If you look at the very end of the credits where it shows the year, it says 1989 Universal. That's why I led with that.
Well, 89, that's the copyright stamp. IMDb lists a theatrical release of January 19, 1990. So it was obviously ready to go in 89. You could say it's a movie from 89, but I don't know if they had any.
That's a very early 1990 release.
Yeah.
Very
fourth week. So
very rare that a quality film comes out in the early weeks of January, but once in a while.
This was such
usually where they just dump everything.
Yeah.
Well, I remember Texas Chainsaw 3D came out in early February of 2013, and that was a pretty terrible movie. Not gonna lie.
Is that the one that they put out as just Texas Chainsaw without the 3D? Like,
Do your thing, cuz.
I think that
It's
I got
that one.
Yeah, I think I got it. I haven't watched it yet.
Still better than the Next Generation, but oh,
Oh, I love the Next Generation.
Yeah, that's one of my
It was a
favorites.
fun film. Such a
Well,
fun film.
we haven't even done first impressions. We're already.
well. Anyway, so the premise of Tremors is these two handymen live in this super small town. There's you can see the sign, population 14, and something weird is happening out in the desert, and it turns out desert full of giant underground monsters. So from that premise, you get an awful lot of solid horror nastiness, like a really cool, unique monster that you won't really forget anytime soon, and also a lot of great one-liners and comedy. So, well, like I already alluded to earlier, so my first impression of this movie was I saw it on TNT when I was pretty little, and it really blew me away. So I've been a very big fan of the whole franchise ever since. I think maybe my favorite one is Tremors 2, which takes everything good about this movie and just amps it up. The deaths are nastier, the creatures are cooler, the jokes are funnier, everything you like in Tremors is amplified in Tremors 2. So I was kind of more familiar with Tremors 2 growing up because I could find Tremors, the first Tremors, on TV pretty frequently. It seemed like it was on somewhere, playing every month. But I would have to go rent Tremors 2. So I slightly remember Tremors 2 a little bit more, but it was such a beloved series, and just I loved it. And I remember the first time I saw it, it being scary, but what I could handle. There are a lot of movies that you see when you're younger that kind of expand your boundaries in a safe way, and I feel like this was probably a really good candidate for that. So,
yeah, it keeps you right there where each time it might get a little too scary, they kind of temper it with the good characters and the comedy and stuff.
Exactly. If you have a 9-year-old, or I was kind of weird, but if you have a 9-year-old or an 8-year-old, they could watch this movie and they probably wouldn't have nightmares, you know what I mean? But it would still really stick with them.
For sure.
So anyway, whose first impression do we want to go with now? Volunteers.
I guess I'll volunteer. I guess I saw it when I was probably a little kid myself, probably when it first came out, just not in the theaters. I think I saw it on TNT when it came out on DVD, and I think it was on USA as well from time to time. Eventually,
I think USA has some of the rights to the series too.
So I think I saw it over time on TV, and I will always remember that face in the ground where the eyes are just not there. but in any case, it was a movie that it had some frightening moments, and I think for a creature design of that intensity, that was the largest creature that I remembered anyone dealing with in any creature movie. So whenever it's whenever I think about a creature monster like film, this one is probably on my top 10 monster movies. So if I think about it, so
the design of the
I had a very good experience with this one. Anyways, anyone else?
I love
next?
that. So it's awkward pauses.
I'm just gonna start taking people. All right, how about you, Mo? What's your impression?
I'm pretty much fairly certain my first impression was very similar to yours. Saw this super young. I couldn't have been much more than 6 or 7 years old. Parents used to, this is a parental rental classic right here. So I don't know if my parents were just trying to fuck me up as a kid, but they did a good job of it. And so like they were always really stoked on this. So Tremors 2, actually, I vividly remember them reserving that bitch when it was at the store. Good times. I don't know, scared the crap out of me, but again, very much the same way with you. It was also something that I could handle and wanted to kind of immediately watch again. Other than that, I just thought that the tongues were really cool, you know, and obviously Bert rules.
You know, the more I think about it, the more it's kind of like, if we had to put it in terms for somebody who's never seen it, it's kind of like Jurassic Park, kind of scary. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there is a moment like that reminds me for some reason of Jurassic Park. I'm sure we'll get to it, but it really reminds me of it with the music and everything.
Yeah, what does it have in there, King Kong?
Well, there was a moment in, I think it was the second movie, that I was like, I wonder if they are trying to borrow one of the raptor scenes here.
I think if Bert was in friggin' Jurassic Park, those movies would each be over in like 20 minutes. You know, you'd just be.
It's funny you say that. The little girl in this one's the little girl from that movie. So I didn't realize that going in.
It is. She comes back for one later on too.
Oh damn! I did not know that.
I didn't know.
So Mindy was played by the girl who played Lex.
Yeah.
I love that part where she's like, "He left us. He left us."
It's like, well, at least you can see the monsters this time. Jesus,
Right.
it's an improvement, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I guess I should jump in. Could not tell you my full experience with this one because I really can't remember. I know that it was a movie I was aware of as a younger person. I was aware of it. I had seen the previews at the video store. I feel like my dad must have rented it once, and I probably saw part of it, or maybe it was on TV. I don't think I saw the whole thing, but I saw just enough to have a vague recollection of it. And I just never really cared to go back to it. And
why?
I don't know, over the years, I was kind of like, one day. It didn't seem priority. And honestly, when I saw it on your list, I was like, this is a good excuse to check this one out again. And to be honest, so this is the first time that I know I've seen it all the way through. And my first impression is pretty positive overall. I do agree. It's got a lot of good humor. It's definitely has a pretty strong cheeseball factor to it, but it's kind of, they were trying to pay homage to some of the older films, and so it kind of, it's appropriate, you could say. Kind of like, just like the Indiana Jones were trying to pay homage to a certain type of older film. That's what this was doing. And I don't know that I found it terribly scary, but if I really, really had paid attention as a kid, I probably would have. But there were a couple scenes that made me a little antsy. And the basic concept is definitely scary. The idea of what would happen if you really don't know what part of the ground is safe.
And these
Is it safe?
and these creatures,
lava, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
and these creatures predated anything that any paleontologist had ever come across,
Right.
according to that one girl in there.
Well, they intentionally did not give.
Mhm.
They intentionally did not give an answer to that question in this movie, but they kind of threw that out the window in the sequel. So I think they kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a conscious choice that they made, where it's like, where does the monster come from? Like, that's not necessarily all that important.
And I did like the one
Never
part.
tell.
I did like the one part where the seismologist, was like, these are unprecedented. And the guy's like, yeah, but where'd they come from? And I'm like, yeah,
Well, our main characters are Val and Earl.
right.
And Val and Earl are just kind of like, I don't quite want to say like average Joe sort of types. Like they're basically like country handymen,
Right.
and they're not, they're not like they're not dumb, but they're not like scientists or anything,
They're basically a couple of good old boys who just do odd jobs for various people. They kind of picture themselves as being a little more, like
Rugged.
cowboy type or whatever. And they keep talking about, we got to leave this town and whatever. And at one point, they're like, I think Valentine says something like, we waited one damn day too long to leave this town. But
that's a running joke.
This is where I do have to disagree with you, Dustin. The second one did ramp up a lot of what was great about the first one, but there was no Kevin Bacon, and he was great in the first one.
Well, the second one does, because it's like, so it's kind of difficult to talk about Tremors without referring to the entire like franchise itself, because it's kind of built a lot on it. The series has built a lot on itself. I mean, it did have a TV series that I can't believe got canceled because it was honestly really fun. And then the movies themselves, like, there really isn't a bad Tremors movie in my opinion. Like, they're all enjoyable, like on their level. Like the first two are a lot more serious. And they start to veer more towards kind of like that comedy element in 3, and then they really kind of embrace it in 5 and 6. And 4 itself is arguably kind of the ultimate like realization of the comedy theme, because part 4 is like a period piece set in like the 1800s.
Yeah, it's like
that functions as a prequel to the entire thing, and it's just nuts. It's like, okay, we know this is crazy. We're just gonna go for it while still respecting the material, and you gotta be able to enjoy that.
Yeah, it's good.
So
absolutely.
that's kind of why that's why it's kind of hard to, I guess, just focus on the first one, and why we keep jumping around. But I just want an explanation of why we've been doing that out there.
And that is one note I want to make about my first impressions is, in preparation for this, I did watch 2 and 3 for the first time. Didn't have enough time to get beyond that, but I've got 4 and 5, and I'll give them a go pretty soon. But
they're so fun. You are in for such a treat. I mean, there was one thing I didn't like in the most recent one, Cold Day in Hell. Even the names become kind of more self-aware. There was a scene where like somebody's being grabbed by one of the tentacles. So for those who don't know, the monsters are basically these giant underground worms, and they have these tentacles in their mouths that come out and like pull things in. And there's a scene in the 6th one where one of the tentacles comes through a window and like grabs somebody. And it happens very slowly, and the girl is just like, help me, and everybody is kind of like frozen, like they don't do anything until it like smashes through the window and like swallows her whole. And that really bothered me, because it's like, what the fuck? Like, Bert wouldn't just watch that happen. Like, I don't know, I think that's maybe my only gripe with the entire series, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know that I noticed that, but I definitely would agree. That seems out of character. He'd lit it up. Done something.
Yeah, because so Val and Earl are the main characters of the first one, and then Earl is the main character of the second one, but they kind of go away, and Bert becomes our main character throughout the rest of the series, because he's just
except for the 4th one.
Well, arguably he kind of is in the 4th one.
Although Earl is it?
Yeah, Earl. Val is Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, Earl comes back in the second one, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Lazy Eye Earl, love him.
Now, I was going to say from my first impressions of the film, because this was not my first time watching this. I actually had the original pack that I ended up giving Jacob when I upgraded to the Steelbook. I had heard of it for a while because my father loves this movie series. Mainly because he's in love with everything that has to do with the desert. But I don't think I watched this. I don't remember when I first watched it. I know it was in my adulthood years because I didn't find it scary. As a child, I would have found it scary, but I found the Garfield Halloween special scary as a child.
That's a
Well, I mean, if it's like weird, the thing Garfield from Reddit, and then, well, definitely, who wouldn't be terrified of that? But
pretty terrified of that Bill Murray Garfield, I'll tell you that much.
But I did watch, when I did sit down and the first time I remember watching it was I sat and I watched it, I binged it 1 through 4, just straight out. So it's harder for me to separate them out. But I do remember how I never really considered Tremors to be a horror series. I always considered it to be a mixture series. Kind of a mixture between action, adventure, horror, and comedy. So, and I felt like they went less and less on the horror element as we went on in the series. Of course, like I say, I haven't seen 5 and 6 or the TV series yet, but I will be. But that seems to be the direction they were going, is less horror, more action comedy.
Yeah, you could be forgiven for saying it's like a sci-fi horror comedy in the desert.
yeah, I would say sci-fi is a good designation too. Although there is always like the horror element in there though, because one thing that's really consistent in, well, all of them really, is that this is when you get eaten by one of these things, like it's an incredibly painful death. Like it's always shown to be pretty horrible. So there's
even
always
in the first one with the like lack of gore, you know, they constantly do kind of remind you how horrifying it would be to be devoured by these.
Go ahead.
It's like getting sucked into a meat grinder.
I was going to
And
say,
that's how everyone who gets eaten in every movie plays it, and it's like, oh god.
they kind of throw that out the window though, because was it the second one where Bert got eaten and
Yeah, I was gonna say he got eaten and was radioing within it.
right.
Well, Bert knew he was coming out the other end. He didn't.
Bert got very lucky in that one. He was in like a metal drum, and it swallowed the drum.
Yeah.
And he was like super lucky he didn't die.
Now, real quick though, we're talking genres. I just got to throw it out there. I know this is a dirty word with you, Dustin, but you could almost call these westerns.
Oh, baby.
Sure. Yeah, you really could. I mean,
Especially fourth one.
Kind of the structure.
And I'm sorry, but
Val and Earl are pretty much cowboys.
It's neo-western sci-fi horror comic. Let's get all trendy with it.
And I'm sorry, but there is also kind of to me a Jaws moment in here in the first film as well, because when the worm comes underneath the floor of that canteen.
Yeah, when Chang gets eaten, it's exactly like when Chang gets eaten. Yeah.
When he comes up underneath the darn thing, it's almost like Jaws when he came up from underneath the boat, and you see his entire jaws open and shut. You know, it was kind of a Jaws moment to me.
Well, we kind of get that early on. But anyway, so going into the beginning of the story, like, you know, we were introduced to Val and Earl just kind of out in the middle of nowhere, doing their, I kind of wanted to say handyman thing, but they're like
just taking a nap together, really.
Yeah, they're like waking up after like camping out. Like I guess they were like herding cattle or something.
No, they were putting that fence up. Remember?
They were putting a fence up. Okay, because it's.
But there are cattle nearby.
This movie moves very quickly, so it's. You know, I've seen this movie probably 70 times, and it's a little difficult for me to remember perfectly, like, the continuity of things, because it's like, oh, I remember that. I remember that. I remember that. What?
It trucks right along, dude.
It's also a little difficult.
Exactly.
remember when Kevin Bacon had his long hair like that in any other thing after this too.
Yeah, but like that opening scene is so good though because it establishes, Val and Earl like so perfectly, so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially like that little joke. Like you get a sense of like what their relationship is. Like they're like super
the
close,
stampede.
they're, like super close friends. Yeah, I love that joke.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Like, all right, wake up, Earl. And then he starts shaking the truck. Earl, stampede! And Earl like snaps up. He's like, ah! And he looks out, and there are like 2 cows there.
Well, and their argument about who's going to make breakfast is like friggin' adorable too, because they've made each other breakfast so many times to just lose track of who did it last, kind of thing, like an old married couple.
Right.
And they use that. They use that joke a lot throughout the series. They come back to it quite a few times. The paper, rock, scissors, at least twice.
Yeah, my favorite.
In the series after.
My favorite version of that use of that is in part 2, where like there's like a new guy that Earl is working with, and the new guy finally beats him in rock paper scissors for something, and the guy's like, "Yeah, I win," and then Earl's like, "Nope, rock rips through paper."
Yeah.
Runs off and does it.
That's almost might be kind of a play on the scene in this where Val punches Earl,
Right.
isn't it? And then he just
Rock
looks.
rips through paper.
Right.
I saw that I saw that when I was like 5 or 6, or I saw that early enough that whenever I played rock paper scissors for the rest of my life, like I've always kind of used
Tremors.
that if I wanted to cheat. It's like,
Oh,
nope,
that,
rock
yeah.
rips through paper.
Right.
It's true.
The dynamic where Earl kind of fancies himself the guy with the plan, like and Val's more of like a freewheeling kind of come what may sort of character. And
Yeah, a lot of ways where they parallel Dante and Randall. Actually, I was thinking
a
a
little
lot.
bit.
When I was watching
Yeah.
this.
A little bit, but I love one particular line that stuck out to me. I thought was kind of funny because it was like it helped establish that, but it also kind of showed that sometimes Earl's just full of shit. And that was this. He's like, "Damn it, Valentine! You never plan ahead. You never take the long view. I mean, here it is Monday, and I'm already thinking of Wednesday.
I know.
It is Monday, right? Yeah. That reminded me of the line in The Big Lebowski. Is this what day is today?
Oh, it's so good.
But yeah, they're a fun. They're a fun team. Like as far as like a lead, you could as a comedy duo, but also as like it's almost like a buddy.
It's like a buddy comedy.
Buddy cop sort of. Yeah.
I was hesitant to say that, but it is totally like a
Right.
lethal weapon kind of a thing
Right.
almost.
And then, of course, as the series goes on, Bert takes more and more center stage. In this one, he's introduced with his wife, Heather, and they're the nut job survivalists. I just...
We got every gun known to man.
What?
We got every gun known to man. Killed the son
And
of
that
a
was
It pays off.
And I just find it...
and that was Reba McEntire's first role, wasn't it?
her
I
first
believe
movie
Like
role.
movie role.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did kind of put them into a bit of a corner though, because when it's like, hey, this is a franchise now, it's like, oh, we can't have her in any more of these. Crap, what do we do?
Why though? It's not like she was up to anything.
Oh, she was very busy with the music, but yeah.
fuck's sake.
Yeah,
She
I
would have
guess.
done better with Tremors, man. Like people'd still give a shit other than us.
Though she has gone on to a very successful acting career, which
Right?
is interesting that it came from here. But it is interesting that Michael Gross played. I did not realize he was the star of Family Ties, which is a show I did grow up with as a young child. And I was watching the user commentary, and they were like, "Yeah, he's the guy from Family Ties." I was like, "Holy crap, he is!" And now I can't not see it. And that adds a little bit of a humor to it as well.
I know, like, I don't think I've ever seen an episode of Family Ties. And like, I know it was a show and I know he was in it. That is literally the extent of my Family Ties knowledge.
See, I'm definitely like a sitcom head, so I've seen a lot of Family Ties, but
It was really big when I was a kid, and it was that one and Cheers and a couple others were ones that I would watch with my folks. And I probably haven't seen it in 25 years. Or
Was that like Silver Spoons era too?
I never saw that.
God. I know I've seen them, but it's like one of those things where you've seen so many over the years, and when they fade back into the past, and you haven't seen them for like 20 years, then your mind just kind of runs them all together.
It's just a gray outline.
It kind of makes me sad that they never had a Family Ties reunion, a Tremors movie with Michael J. Fox. That would have been great.
Well,
Avoid on stage with all those people riding it or something. That'd be fun.
So that was the one where Michael J. Fox played the dick who wanted to be the kid who wanted to be the banker. Then
Pretty much, yeah.
okay, yeah, then I know that one. Okay, yes, he played an asshole in that series.
Right over my head. And, anyway, so then I'm. This is where I start to get a little fuzzy on the exact timeline. So I think don't they meet Rhonda after that? Like they're driving back to town, and it's like, oh look, it's the grad student that comes out here to study like seismology every semester. And it's like, wait, the new one's supposed to be a girl, right? And Val is like drives over all excited, and he just like shoots out like his wish list for like what he wants, which is pretty
blue-eyed, curvy, and long in the legs or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of weird to like listen to now because it's like it's kind of like an indicator of like kind of how immature he is. So it's like, oh yeah, I just want somebody who's like a model. And
Tammy
like
Lynn Baxter, bro. Okay.
It's kind of a weird thing nowadays.
It is,
I mean, like,
and
not...
the girl he describes doesn't even sound that good. Like the chick is way hotter than the description that he gives.
She is cute. Yeah. But it is kind of interesting because Earl is just trying way too hard, and you're like, nah, man, that ain't gonna happen.
Well, Earl has kind of like a practical outlook on it. It's like, you have to like accept that Earl's basically says something to the effect that, you have a type and it's not like a good type, like get better taste. Or at least that's how I kind of interpreted it this time. It's like, there's a moment like in the truck where they're discussing, it's like, oh, like that, what was her name? And he's like, hey, and he has like photos of like all his exes like above the.
No, isn't it Tammy Lynn Baxter? Like he punches
something like that.
His visor all hard when he's Tammy Lynn Baxter or something like that.
Yeah, he's like all offended. It's like, hey, you remember her? And like Earl seems to really not like the type that Val tends to fall for. Because he's like, they're all the same. I broke a nail and dead weight. It's like, that's interesting.
They would
he wants a girl that can hammer some fence posts with him. Sorry, buddy. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, it's pretty much kind of the impression that you get from Earl. And it's kind of nice with like the first two Tremors movies. They kind of have this sort of like romance undercurrent. Because like when they meet Rhonda here, like Val was like, oh, hey, and she's kind of, and it's like a normal introduction, but they're like little subtle things that kind of show off that they're both sort of attracted to each other.
One it's pretty it's like ahead of its time. Someone might call it progressive. Like they have a bit of a sort of a feminist thing with that Rhonda chick in the movie because she kicks ass.
Yeah,
like basically throughout the whole thing, she's never just sort of the damsel in distress. Unless you count the barbed wire, we all would be in that situation.
She actually has some brains under that grass.
Yeah, and she can take care of herself. Like she, helps them figure out how to survive this situation. Like, she doesn't have like a weak moment, except for maybe like there's a part where they're trying to escape, and she trips in some barbed wire. Like that's maybe the only time she's like.
Again, really I would say we would all be the damsel in distress.
Yeah, we would all have
like a bitch if I
And then of course that gave Kevin Bacon the chance to take off your pants or something like that. But I was going to say, actually, the way Earl describes Val's general girlfriends, they would be the characters in this movie that you are like, please let that one be the one to die. Please. Now,
Yeah.
like maybe even almost as much as Melvin. I mean, maybe not quite as much, but definitely.
Yeah. Melvin was everybody's favorite character.
I did like him. I did like Bert's way of tweaking him in the third movie. I did like that, but the dude needs to go.
Well, anyway, what I was referring to with Rhonda too was like after they meet and she like checks her nose, it's like, and there's kind of this moment in her face where she's like, she has like a bunch of sunscreen like smeared on her nose and she looks kind of dorky and she like rubs her nose because she's like, and you get the sense that it's like, oh, I look so dorky.
Yeah,
like she's maybe a little embarrassed. And there's a similar moment in the second one that I personally really like. It's a lot less subtle than that. Like Earl meets this female scientist at this like outpost that he's been hired to like go kill graboids at. That's what they end up calling them. I kind of hate the name, but whatever. And anyway, so she bends over to pick some. This is in Tremors too. So she bends over to pick something, and he kind of checks her butt out, and you're kind of like, "Oh, Val, oh, Earl, come on, man." And then he has to like bend over and pick something up, and she checks his butt out, and it's like, "Oh, okay."
Well, one of the things at the end of the movie that I thought interesting as an anecdote that they had in some of the special features is they had the commentary with the people that made the film. They're like, yeah, we're sitting there watching it, and everybody's like going, come on, kiss her. And then, of course, they end it like with them just leaving, essentially. And then they come up with that last scene
That's right.
of... like, oh, well, the lighter. Yeah, you need to come back and we need to go back and get that lighter.
No, I think that if I understood correctly, I think that was the original final scene, but then they added he's just going to kiss her because that was what everyone wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they really complement each other very well as characters.
They had a hard time making it to Bixby, though.
Yeah, they did.
I forget. Do we ever get to fucking see Bixby?
I don't think we ever do.
Leave
in 6 movies and 12 episodes of a TV series, I don't think we ever see fucking Bixby.
We know they have an
The
Arby's.
next one is like, fucking Tremors, the Bixby Chronicles or something. We don't know what's going on over there.
Like I said, we know they have an Arby's because one of the characters works there in the second film.
That's amazing. Okay, so we already have beef and cheddars in store if we go to Bixby. We just
So it's not Taco Bell at the end of the, so it's not like Taco Bell at the end of the universe in Demolition Man.
Hey, you could have worse than Arby's, okay?
But anyway, so after that, I guess we are doing a scene-by-scene thing. Damn it, I tried so hard and got so not far. But anyway, so after that, we see more of Val and Earl, being handymen around town. It's like, we really should leave. It's like, well, I mean, it's not so bad. And they're pumping a septic tank and it just sprays them with shit. And they're like, you know what? Fuck this.
Yeah, I love that whole sequence. That cracks me up every time. Like, we're out. And then they even turn down free beer.
Yeah. We get introduced to the rest of the townsfolk too. There's Mindy and her mom. Like, her mom is like an artist, and she tries to convince them. It's like, oh, stay for another month. I need someone to build me a kiln. I'll throw in lunches and beer. And we meet. So at the general store in town, we meet Walter Chang, the guy who owns the general store. We meet Bert and his wife. Bert's played by Michael Gross, and they're like the gun nut couple that lives like up in the mountains. And we meet
military compound.
Pretty much, yeah. And I think we meet Miguel too. I think
Miguel
too. So we kind of this movie has a small cast, and pretty much everybody is used.
Yeah, who's that feller gets sucked through the friggin' tire though? I always forget his name.
That's Lester. He's Melvin's dad. So
That's
Melvin
Melvin's
is like this punk teenager who like pisses everybody off, and you sort of want him to get eaten, but you actually feel you manage to feel pretty bad for him, like when his dad gets eaten, because he stops screwing around and being annoying and you can tell it like it really hurts him.
He's kind of like a live action 90s version of what Nelson, isn't that his name on The Simpsons, would be? Like
that's a pretty good description. That's basically Melvin.
Yeah. I could see that, sadly.
Hey Val, I'll give you $10 if you buy me some beer. It's like beer's for adults, Melvin. And they get sprayed with they're pumping his septic tank, and it's like, why don't you give us a hand, Melvin? Half this shit's yours.
His laugh when it happens is so fucking. That's what sets me off every time.
And, anyway, so they're driving out of town, and they notice somebody up on a tower, and they recognize it as like one of their friends from town. They see him, it's like, oh, he climbed up there because he's drunk. It's like, all right, and they're scissors to go get him down, and well, he's dead. So
that was
died of dehydration.
It's an early.
That was an early. It was an early thing in that regard, because you got really one of the early deaths, but you didn't realize entirely it was a graboid.
Well, no.
At the time.
Up until they were up on the ropes themselves, and they're like, now I understand why he did that.
Even if he did go up there drunk, check it. Even if he did go up there drunk and just died of being too scared to climb down, it still would be horrifying to find that,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's just, we're leaving town at last. Oh, there's a dead body.
Goddamn dead guy. Now I got to talk to the cops.
Yeah, so they go.
Not long though.
They go get the local doctor who tells them this information, and that introduces the doctor, and then they try to leave again. They drive by an old guy's farm, and one of the more, I guess, iconic moments. This farmer, old Fred. That's pretty much all the information we get. We see something suck him down off camera, and when they're driving back. And when they're driving back, they notice it's all his sheep have been slaughtered and he's missing. So they get out of their truck, they're looking around. And then I think you mentioned this scene, right, Dave? You want to do this scene?
Well, supposedly, the construction scene?
No, finding old Fred's head.
Oh, yeah. When they come back with well, actually not when they come back. It's when they actually lift up his hat and discover that his face is in the ground, and you can't see his eyes. It's like his whole face, his whole head is hollow. It's like it's been eaten out from the inside.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And that construction scene you were talking about, that was really the first visual kill by the graboids. Even though it didn't have a full visual, it wasn't
we get an idea of what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the guy gets dragged, and I think you get to see little snaky things that people are kind of tricked into believing the graboids are.
We don't see those until they take out the doctor in the scene a little bit after that. But so Val and Earl are driving back to town, and they stop these construction guys, and they're like, look, there's a killer on the loose. Look out, man! He's cutting people's heads off. And I'm not kidding. And they drive off to tell everybody back in town.
They must be pulling our leg.
Am I not mistaken, or isn't it when they freak out at old Fred's place that the thing grabs the axle of their truck and they're all panicked or whatever, and they
that happens in a little bit. But there was a fun comedy moment there where the construction guys are one of them is yeah, they're messing with us, and it's yeah, and then the other guy is kind of looking around, and he's he picks up a crowbar and kind of tests the weight in case he has to swing it at somebody. And so they're jackhammering in the road, and they hit something, and there's like this loud creature scream, and like some fluid comes out of the ground, and then the jackhammer just takes off down the street. The guy's foot gets caught up in it, and he gets pulled screaming off camera. We hear some like more creature sounds, and
you see the camera move up the mountain of dirt or rock or whatever, and that's when you still continue to hear the screams and the monster noises. And the other guy goes up to the mountain, and he's like, "Hey, where are you?"
And then there's a rock slide that blocks off the road. Which I think that guy is actually killed in the rock slide and then eaten afterward. Like I don't think he's eaten right away.
Yeah, is there like some brains in a helmet or something like that you see?
Yeah, like this movie has pretty good gore effects too.
Skull fragments or brain matter.
Yeah, I noticed on this watch of the DVD that there's even some like skin. There's some flesh with like hair on it, and it's like,
That's
like
subtle. I like it.
Somebody did a good job on that.
Yeah, they went
Like the effects are just better, or even better than I remembered, and I already had a really high opinion of them. And so anyway, they go back to town and tell everybody what's going on. And then they drive back out there to try to go to Bixby yet again. Like we should have made that a drinking game. Like how many times do they not make it to Bixby?
It should be. But yeah, that makes sense. They go back, they find the rock slide, right? Isn't that
and then they kind of back up into the wall, into like the dirt wall, and their truck seems to get stuck on something, but then it's like, okay. And when they arrive back at the general store, it's like, the road's blocked off, everybody. They have this huge snake thing stuck to the back of their truck.
And of course, I love this next moment here because then the store owner is like,
I'll give you $5 for this. 20.
15.
And they're like, yeah, baller, 15. We're good at this.
And then they cut to the scene, and he was charging how much for a picture with it?
$3 per picture. And it's like, yeah. And they're
That's why I love the name Graboids too, because it is cheesy, but it sounds like a video game or like a creature feature, like Graboids.
There was a video game I used to play a lot of, Zombies Ate My Neighbors for the Super NES. And it's basically like all the monsters from all of horror are like after people, and in a very late in the game level, Invasion of the Snakeoids, basically they're Graboids. They looked a little different, but they are Graboids. They're under the ground. You can see them coming. Like they, for the most part, look like Graboids. They are Graboids. So Snakeoids is actually a name they float for them in this movie too, isn't it? Isn't that what Melvin wants to call them?
I think Melvin does say that, yeah.
Yeah, it would be a Melvin name.
And I think the word Graboid's name, you got to keep in mind who is naming them. Just like Ass Blasters and the other ones. You're not getting them named by a lot of these scientists, so to speak. These are like common folk that are naming them. So you're going to have these type of just vernacular names.
Good salt of the earth people.
Well, like the Chang or whatever naming it Graboids.
Yeah.
That should make sense, like from a marketable thing, you want it to have like a catchy sort, and it is a catchy name even though it's silly.
Exactly.
One could say that the sandworms in Dune were grandfathers of these things.
Well, Dune is its own can of worms, but
well, there was a relation between the two,
more like
in a sense, design wise. Mainly in that they needed to figure out how to differentiate themselves between them and the Dune worms.
But anyway, so kind of after all this, we get a scene with the doctor and his wife like out at where they're building their house, and this is kind of one of our more effective like horror scenes, where they're just they're just out in the wild, they're just out there at night, looking at the stars, and the generator goes out, and they're like, "Hey, what happened to it?" And they find the bitten off cord, because it vibrates, it was making noise. And all of a sudden, the generator shoots up out of the ground because, they can't eat that. And the doctor is like, "Oh, what's going on?" And he wants to, like, hang out and, like, check it out. And it's kind of amazing. It's like, you're supposed to be a doctor, and this is, like, the stupidest thing I've seen anybody do. Like, his wife is like, "Something is wrong. We are in danger. Let's go." He's like, No, hold on. I bet it's like a geyser or something." And he gets called screaming down to hell pretty much right after.
If he didn't know about the weird worm that grabbed the guy's truck at this point, then that would make sense for him to be so stupid. But
yeah, they weren't around. They weren't around for that scene, so I understand that. But at the same time, like, something is very wrong, because if it was a geyser, wouldn't it have shot out of the same hole instead of another hole 30 feet away, accompanied by like a loud animal snarl?
Well, at that point, yeah, I'm the fuck out of there. But initially, I would, like, if my generator just disappeared, I'd be looking at it like, what the hell?
Not to mention, from a basic common sense standpoint, if large hunks of metal are falling from the sky, you probably don't want to be out in the open.
Exactly. But he gets, this is the first time we really get to see a graboid like kill somebody, and it's pretty. It kind of gives me some chills too.
That scene still bothers me, dude. The whole sequence with him and with his wife, just all of it.
That part.
The first time
I agree with you.
This is the first time I'd ever seen a station wagon get so totally sucked into the ground. I mean, literally by these snake-like looking things. I mean,
like, that's kind of a good subtle thing too, because after they get him, they come after her, and she's able to jump into the station wagon. And while she's like struggling to like close and lock all the doors, she bumps the radio, and it turns on and plays this like sad country song about being alone now.
Which they can still kind of hear, if I remember right, when they brush away the shit off the headlights later in the movie.
The graboids pull still managed to kill her. Like they pull the station wagon underground.
That just doubles down to me on the horrifying part of that. Like, she's suffocated at best down there inside of that fucking crypt that the car became, and the goddamn radio's still playing. Like, that just bothers me. Me and Dustin at least watch a lot of fucked up shit. Same thing with David, and that is one that still fucking bothers me for some reason.
It does bother me, especially since you can still see the headlights.
That lady plays it so solid too when she's like, "Jim!" Like that fucking way that she screams right there just immediately gets me.
It's like, ugh. Like that's the great thing about a lot of the series is that, as silly as some moments are, everybody is bringing their A game, and that's probably best shown in the first one, like this one.
That car scene definitely really freaked me out a bit, because that is a bit claustrophobic. It's probably the closest I would have been to having a suspenseful moment for me in the movie, just because it is so claustrophobic. Just seeing the dirt kind of come in. Then reading about this or hearing about it later, like they could not submerge the car totally, so they had to cut away.
Now, what do you think? Do you think it would have been more scary if they had finished that sequence, or is it more effective that they had to imply it?
Implied.
And show the light, and show the headlights. They cut to like overhead. Show the headlights slowly become more vertical until like they're pointing straight up, and then like the light goes away.
So fucking
like, it was so nasty. Like,
it was,
and they didn't even have to show you anything.
It was like the sinking of the Titanic. I mean, even that is kind of drastic.
Well, we had motherfuckers bouncing off of guardrails and shit while that was going on. That was frozen babies and shit.
You in the background need to emote more. Wave your arms and stuff.
But dude, like all the kills in Tremors are kind of like that when you think about it. Like even the farmer kill with his face there, all of it's real subtle. You know, they blew enough of their budget, I think, on just doing the creature effects, which, considering they are supposed to be slightly campy in a way, even though I think they pull it off really well.
I mean,
technically at the same time.
I still totally buy like all the creature effects in this movie.
Right.
Like, I cannot see any seams. Like nothing doesn't work. Like, and it's all practical too. Like it's amazing.
It's effortless. I mean, even the scene where they all three of them were stuck on the rock, and they weren't sure whether the thing was still there.
Well, but my point is that like all the kills are pretty fucking subtle when you think about it. The farmer getting sucked down with his face in the ground, like they don't really have to show you the stuff, and it's not as gory as later installments in the series have been, for sure. Because
it's like severed limbs flying everywhere. Yeah,
right. They didn't need to do that. It was very much all in sort of implied kills. Like I'm sure we'll get to the Lester getting sucked through the tire bit at some point, but even that is like, you know, they did a lot with a little there. You hear that motherfucker scream for like a good 50 yards as he's being pulled underground until it finally stops. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so after that, so they get the idea. Like Val and Earl are going to try to ride to Bixby on horses. So this is Bixby attempt number what, 4 or 5? And so they're like, oh yeah, we're going to go check on the doctor. And so that's when they find the car buried underground. They only find it because they can still hear the radio.
And at this moment, like I said, I think this is where they also see the headlights still in there too. They
uncover when they start digging, like looking for the radio.
Actually, this one kind of reminds me a little bit. We're talking about that use of that country music there. Like, again, Valentine has that. Where the hell's that goddamn golden oldie coming from? You know, but like, it reminded me a little bit of the elevator scene in Perfect Blue as well.
Oh yeah.
And actually, I just had the thought, just totally crazy thought of. Like a completely random connection of the croc that swallowed the clock in Peter Pan. It kind of reminds me a little bit.
Well, they kind of had a revisitation of that in the second movie where they had the one with the radio, and he's like, "Huh, that's a good song right there." And it's like, oh crap.
Yeah, that might be more the one I was thinking of when I made that connection. But yeah.
That just has me thinking of the Peter Pan crocodile thing, where it's like, "Do you like codfish?" And the crocodile's like, "Yeah, you do." And he's gonna like kick Captain Hook into its mouth, and the crocodile's like, "Yes, do
it." Dude, there's something about when they use like some wholesome music juxtaposed to some horrifying shit in a movie. You know,
it's kind of overdone it, I think, a little bit. So the fun of the effect has been a little bit dampened because Rob Zombie does that in like every single one of his movies.
Yeah. I don't necessarily associate it so much with him. I'm thinking more stuff sort of like original Toolbox Murders, where the guy's killing the lady the whole time, and there's like really soft folk music and 70s shit playing the whole time in the background.
Well, I mean, shoot, Stephen King, 1408, that song that they play, it'll never, to me, it'll never be the same again. Actually, Stephen King's ruined a couple songs because
look at that Last House on the Left, too. They do that in that fucking movie. And
man, that's a brutal movie.
Like, you know, so there's been a long tradition of that shit before Rob Zombie. But I liked how they did it in Strangers Pray at Night. Just watched that last night. That shit was...
I haven't gotten to see it yet, but I did buy it like last week. It's in my pile.
Nice.
Anyway, so you know, as they're trying to ride their horses after finding the doctor, they're like, "Okay, we're not going to stop. You know, we'll walk the horses if we have to. We got to get to Bixby because you know we're doing it this time." And then they encounter like their first. Then they encounter one of the graboids, and this is the first time we get to really see it in its full glory. Like on screen, like they see the snake the mouth tentacles come out and they're like, they're under the ground. That's why we couldn't find them. And it's like, well, yeah. And then like the ground like starts quaking like after it finishes off the horses, and it's like there must be a million of them, because at this point they still think the monsters are just like the
Snakes.
small things, yeah. And then like we get our first glimpse of the worm as like it breaks out of the ground. It has like this big like cartilaginous beak, kind of like.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a really unique design too.
I feel like there should be bottle cap openers made.
I'm sure
That would be the third movie.
yeah, I'm sure they had it in the third movie.
Oh man, I'm gonna need to watch it again. Like, I need to find this Steelbook set that you guys keep talking about, which I haven't seen it anywhere. It's a Walmart thing, right?
It's a Walmart one. I saw it and I had to get it because it's such a cool looking Steelbook. And it has the first 4 on like 2 discs, and then the 5th and 6th on single discs.
See, I just got the regular like 6 movie pack of Tremors. It has the same cover art as that Steelbook. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's the same thing.
I have the Attack Pack trademark, but I think this was one of the first DVDs I ever bought.
Was that like the 4-pack?
Yeah, it's 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah,
That's the one that I had before. I had that one, and then I had Tremors like 5 and 6 single or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, I have 5 and 6 single on Blu-ray. I pre-ordered 6, like it was $20, but when I pre-ordered it from this place, it came with like a little postcard-sized thing of the cover art signed by Michael Gross.
That's
so that was pretty fun. So it was worth it. But anyway, so the worm like breaks out of the ground, and it's like raw, and it's like huge and impressive, and the effect totally plays, and they're like, oh shit, and so they're like running from it after it dives back on, kind of like a land whale sort of thing.
Yeah.
So they're running from it, like you can see it knocking down fence posts as it goes.
I love that.
Why wouldn't it move like a foot to the right? And it probably would have helped them if it hadn't had to knock.
Right.
But who cares? I mean, that takes away so much of the fun. And anyway, they're running for this concrete trough, and they try to jump the trough, but they miss, and they're like, oh shit, we're dead. And like the graboid slams into the concrete like so hard it actually kills itself. It smashes that exoskeleton.
I will have to say that is probably my favorite part.
It's one of mine for sure.
It's definitely one of the big like memorable moments. It's like some bitch knocked itself out cold. Like some of the concrete falls away, and like one of the tentacles like flops out.
Right.
And like 80 gallons of fluid like follows from it.
I love it. It's so oozy. But but now it's making less sense to me that Bert wouldn't have had thicker concrete than that culvert or whatever the hell.
Well, he does later.
Later, but it just doesn't make sense to me that he wouldn't initially, given his personality. That's kind of, I think, a little slight inconsistency right there in Tremors.
Well, he
probably wasn't
rookies to come in from underneath.
Yeah, he wasn't. He even said that he wasn't expecting them to come from the way that they came. He actually thought that they were going to be, like I said, they thought that they were. Well, he didn't. He wasn't prepared for a monster threat. He was prepared for a human threat.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But I will say something. And this, you can thank my World War fetish for this shit. Undermining has been a thing forever. So you would, if you were to build a bunker, pour the underground walls probably the same thickness.
True.
Because it's just as possible someone tunnels underneath you and sets a bomb.
They also have a running dialogue throughout the 3 films I saw. They have a running dialogue throughout regarding Bert's tendency toward overkill.
That's so fun. Oh my god.
And I do love, like, one of my favorite lines in the whole thing is when he has these homemade bombs that he's made at the end, and Earl's helping him out, and he gives a piece of fuse to Earl, and Earl's, what kind of fuse is that? Cannon fuse. What the hell do you use it for? My cannon.
What else?
All right.
It's like, yes, he would have a cannon, of course.
Well, despite the,
there have been
I was gonna
times.
say,
There have been times when he's been wrong too. Like in the third movie, so the Tremors creatures have radically different forms, like across their life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, his new, totally graboid-proof bunker has been invaded. And so to prevent them from getting into his food,
Oh yeah,
he blows up his house. And, he finds out it's like, okay, this form is different. When they eat enough, they just pass right out. So just feed them. It's like, no, they don't do that. They do something. They multiply. Like,
the universe is not that
no,
cool.
it's fine. They pass right out. And he has just blown up his house to prevent them from eating. And like somebody takes the phone away from him. It's like, Bert needs a moment alone.
I feel like it's probably not the first time Bert has blown up his house. Like even if we're going pre-graboids, so
well,
that is my favorite. That is one of my favorite jokes in the second movie. So Bert comes to the situation in that movie with this truck just full of like ridiculous, like hilariously overpowered hardware, including like tons and tons of explosives. And it's like, I set a bomb. We better run. I set a bomb. I threw it in your truck. It's like, you threw it in my truck? What, is it not going to be enough? Don't tell me it's not going to be enough. Not enough. And he like stops himself from saying too much because he's always been like, there's no such thing as overkill. And, they run like a couple 100 feet away and Bert's like, no, keep going. Like he doesn't even slow down. And, they hide behind, they run a few hundred more feet and like hide behind something. And Bert's still like, no, keep going. It's going to be big. And he says, it's going to be big like 4 or 5 times. And then the last one, it's going to be big. And then somebody, is it going to be today? And then the explosion leaves like a 50-foot crater in the ground. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But anyway, so Rhonda discovers them in the trench. It's like, hey guys, did you notice anything weird a minute ago? And they just look at her like, fuck. And so then we get kind of our like graboid biology lesson. It's like, oh, they must sense vibrations, and then they find out, wait a minute, there are more of these. Like looking at her readings, and then we get to the scene where
one coming from you
on a rock.
I was saying to her seismograph stuff because she said one's coming from this direction, one's coming from this direction, and one's coming from this
direction. She gets
direction.
out the paperwork and she's like, well, if you look at these readings here, and they're like, okay, we believe you, it's fine, let's get out of here. Which kind of like emphasizes, I guess, they're not scientists, like they're practical people. Like it's like, for it. And so the whole rock scene, where they're stuck on the rock, waiting for it to leave. I think that's kind of where the genesis for this movie came from, because it wasn't one of the writers. The story I've heard is that one of the writers was on a rock and he was like, what if there was something underground and I couldn't get off this rock?
Right. That was the claim. Yeah, that's Wilson. Yeah.
Origin for a story, because that is fucking scary to think about.
Oh yeah. I was going to say with the when we were talking a little bit about that defensive wall. If he had actually built his wall correctly, he wouldn't have gotten one of the more awesome action scenes where they actually fight one of the graboids in their base.
That's the best scene. So
and it's also a great comedy scene.
You could also argue too that there is a bit later where he's like, all this, like when they're riding away and he's like talking about all the shit that he put into that house and like that fortification, and he never accounted for underground. Like Bert's very much an overkill sort of full frontal assault type.
He's not flawless,
Yeah. Absolute best defense maybe wasn't on his mind at that time.
That's kind of what's so endearing about his character is it's like, I am very confident. I know what I'm doing. Oh, shit, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. But that one scene, again, you're right. It's a great action set piece. But I love the comedy. I don't know what it is, especially because in real life, I am bitterly opposed to this sort of mentality. But I often find it amusing to see people that have so many guns that it's like, what the hell do you think you'll need with all those?
I cannot wait to talk about that scene. I do have to step away for a moment, so I know that there's a lot of stuff to kind of cover in between there with them, telling the townsfolk like what's going on and the creatures coming into town. So how about you guys talk about that while I take a brief intermission here, and then we'll jump into the Bert's last stand scene. Well, okay, not last.
So
His first last stand.
So apparently, they figured out that in order to not get attacked by these graboids, is to okay, everyone, let's go to the roof. So they're on the roof. They've grabbed the CB radio to imminently because they haven't heard from Bert in quite some time, and finally he arrives at their bunker.
Over Chang's death there, bro.
Well, we can go back to that, but
yeah, we definitely want Dustin here for that. Sorry, I apologize for my interruption.
Not a problem. He said go ahead and talk about it. So
I think he was saying continue on with the story, but I don't know, because we did have that earlier part of the where they were on the rocks in the first place and trying to have fun pole vaulting.
So
stay on these residual boulders. I like when he says that for no reason after she says it.
So apparently they spend the night on these boulders, and as chicks do in movies like this, they often end up in a guy's arms. Or something like that. And that's what she does. She wakes up.
Why not? I mean, I guess I'd rather curl up to Val than old ass Bert. I mean, no Kevin.
Yeah,
not to mention that,
fucking from Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
not to mention they're in the desert. The nights are freaking cold.
And that sneaky little smile on his face when they wake up too. It's like kind of charming because he's like, oh yeah, I know you're enjoying that, fucker. But
jealous they weren't spinning with the old KB out there on those residual boulders,
But anyway, suddenly, they need to see if the graboid is still down there. So he takes a shovel and he goes down and throws the shovel into the dirt. And yeah, the graboid's still there. So
I believe the professional word for that is tamping.
Well, he in any case, he goes on. Val, not Val. What is her name? Her name
Rhonda.
Rhonda. Rhonda, she gets the bright idea of taking the sticks that are on the ground and pole vaulting across the rocks, and I think that's a great idea because then you get to see this panoramic sun view of these rocks as they're pole vaulting across them. I think that's like a kind of a pretty scene, a beautiful.
It
scene.
is. So and there's that whole like synchronized sequence where they're all doing it at once, and it's like timed with the music. That shit gives it a good feeling. I don't know quite to describe what element that adds to the movie. A little bit of lightheartedness, and then they get to the truck and it gets crazy for a minute, and then there's like a joke.
Go ahead, explain the joke.
Oh, where she like climbs in the back window and she is putting the key in the ignition and press on the pedals, and then they kind of are all celebrating after they beat the graboids off the back of that little Toyota, which doesn't make any sense that it would survive that.
Yeah.
And then they escape, and then they're celebrating and shit, and she's still driving from like down on the floorboards. She's like, guys.
Well, with her hands on the pedals and her feet still sticking out the window.
Dude, there's no way they would have pulled off those. If you really watch it, there's no way that would have went down. Like her actually being able to pull out of there like she did. They'd have smoked it on the first like big patch of sagebrush and been fucking high centered or something. You know?
Good thing she lost her pants later, right?
She deserves to be danced, I suppose. But I don't know, man. I think that Dustin would agree. This movie is, I do have to comment again on it being like perfectly paced, you know? You're never really sitting for more than like 5 minutes with nothing happening.
No, I agree. So shortly after the Tonga toy it gets back to town. Well, that's what some of us call it. What happens from there, Jake? Why don't you take it up from here?
Well, if I'm remembering correctly, this is a scene where they kind of have a conference in the general store, right? Where they kind of sharing their info, and I think Bert and Heather were still out canvassing. Was that the? Yeah. So they're doing this, and then they tell them all this stuff they need to do, and it gets kind of. I'm not remembering the exact order here, but I feel like this part probably
is the part
still out and about. And
well, all of a sudden the cooler started to make some noise, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's that enormous dinosaur of a cooler that.
We're skipping over Kevin Bacon's awesome. Like, this whole valley is a smorgasbord, like.
Well, yeah.
Look, check it out, and he grabs the map, and he's like, "They hit Doc's house right here," and fucking he's yelling all this shit at the people.
Also, while this is going on, they're trying to tell Mindy and her family to get up on the roof, and Mindy's missing at this moment.
I think does that not happen?
That's a little later when they're all getting up on the roof. This part, they're still in the store, and I think this is the part where Tang's coming up with the names and they're trying to come up with,
Suckoids, snakeoids, graboids, that's it. And then like that freezer like pings off and they're like, oh shit, unplug it. It's like, we got it. And then wham, it just comes through the floor and like wrecks Chang's day.
Yeah. So it's like
that whole
last act pretty much.
That was a really nasty kill when he's being like sucked into its mouth, and you can see his leg like break as it pulls him in. It's like, oh damn.
Yeah.
It's rough. That's right there with the fucking station wagon scene for me of being the rough ones, and then Lester's death because
Lester and the tire.
You guys remember Egg Shen from Big Trouble in Little China?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in years, but the new Shout Factory one is coming out fairly soon, and oh boy.
Have you guys covered that on here?
Not
we
yet.
Haven't.
It needs to be.
It does.
They did the 2012 Ninja Turtles series. The writers were really big like horror and sci-fi fans, and they have an homage episode to pretty much everything cool that's ever existed, including Aliens, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Nice.
And also there's even a whole Big Trouble in Little China episode where this sorcerer like bewitches 3 of the turtles and they get the lightning powers in the hats. Like, it is freaking crazy. It's like Lo Chen or whatever.
Dude, there's people that would call Big Trouble like culturally insensitive now, and I would tell them, fuck off.
Big Trouble is meant to just be like this wild, insane thing.
Like, you're not taking it serious. It's not a representation of any of our culture. If Jack Burton is a representation of every truck driver, then
the rugged, muscular hero, typically associated with truck driving.
Yeah, explain the 100-pound guy pumping his fucking like cheeseburger hot dog full of so much nacho cheese that I want to vomit just looking at it.
He's just injecting the cheese into his veins, like in the fucking bathroom.
Either you have some Big Trouble in Little China, or you want to escape from New York. So it's
either way.
Big Trouble, as far as like beer and popcorn movies go, but if I was going for real, I would take Escape from New York. We digress. I digress for that, sir.
I remember thinking Escape was a better movie. But we're kind
I'm
of getting
the
off
only
topic
one
again,
who
aren't we?
had,
What
just-
scene were we on? Like how?
Egg
We
shit
were-
getting swallowed and the motherfucker.
Oh yeah. And so like they climb out onto the roofs,
Mhm.
and like the graboids can still hear them, but they can't figure out, where the hell is that sound coming from? So there's a fairly long stretch here where the graboids are kind of trying to figure out, like, one thing that's kind of nice about these creatures is, like, the series always emphasizes that they can learn, like, but they're not necessarily mindless monsters. And so they're trying to figure out pretty much how to knock down the buildings for a long stretch of the movie here.
Yeah. Probably the only down point of the movie actually is where the graboids are like testing the fan, and by down point we mean the longest period where there's nothing happening, because as I touched on earlier, there's pretty much no more than like 5 minutes in the movie ever where people are talking and nothing's happening.
Yeah, this is kind of the only break you get
It is.
for a lot of the movie.
It's also sort of intriguing in the fact that they are going around like testing the foundations of these buildings.
Maybe they had to recuperate their budget just a little bit.
Yeah, until Bert and his wife get back, and what is that thing that she turns on? She turns on this thing that looks like it's something that like cleans shell casings or something. It's this really loud vibrating drum thing, and it just draws.
What it does is it recycles bullets.
Okay.
I don't know anything about guns really, but whatever you guys said sounded really good to me.
Recycling bullets. The safe thing to do with your bullets when they've been used is to recycle them in a machine that like that, so that you can take all the gun residue and all that jazz,
right, and then make it a fireable bullet again without all that contaminate. I get it.
Oh, you just put the powder back in and put another like slug on top, right?
Right, exactly. It's
That's what I thought it was too.
To clean them.
I just never seen anything like that in reality before.
Me either, and it also does stand to reason that it would attract some motherfucking graboids.
Well, the thing is really loud, and it's already underground because they're doing this kind of in their basement.
Bert, it's coming straight towards you.
And they're like, "What? Why are you guys on the roof? Like, I can't, fix your radio." And it's like, "Damn it, Bert! They're coming for you."
Underneath the ground.
And it like smashes through. It smashes through their one wall, and they're just like, and all they hear over the radio is "God Almighty," and it's like, well, fuck, he's dead. And it kind of like hangs on that for a moment before you start hearing like gunshots echoing. So because they're gun nuts, they have a whole wall in their basement. This is like one of the coolest scenes in the movie, and it's what I think everybody remembers like most. This is one of the things people remember most vividly about this movie. It's like the graboid like smashes through one of their walls, and they have the opposite wall is just like all guns. It's almost like a video game level, and they pretty much have to use their gun collection to defend themselves against the graboid.
Right.
And so I like how they keep everything loaded too. Did anybody else kind of pick up on that? It's like,
yeah, it was all ready to rock. Like none of it was fucking. They didn't have to.
It's like fucking Doom or something.
Exactly.
It's like, oh shit, just pull out down the shotgun and start shooting it.
He had to load the one that he had in the cabinet, like behind glass. But other than that, yeah.
I love that element to it too. Like the elephant gun was behind some glass.
Yeah.
I mean, without hitting it right on the nose, they sort of did that. In case of emergency, break the glass here, sort of thing.
I did like, but again, this was like the one extreme. It was like they were in their element. They had everything at their fingertips. And then you had at the latter part of movie 3 where Bert is without a gun. And he keeps complaining about it. If only I had a gun. I wish I had a gun. And then they keep telling Bert, you don't have a gun.
Deal with it. It's like, no, I don't wanna.
But it's like I said, I don't know why this amuses me because it doesn't really, but when I see it in a movie, it amuses me for some reason.
Right. I think you kind of
Over the
touched on it
top.
yourself there. Like fucking Tremors at the same time celebrates that like gun nut
Right.
stuff, but
While
also
criticizing it.
a little bit.
Yeah.
So
But it's like birds, the whole survivalist thing. Like his obsession with the MREs is also a subject of jokes. Like we pointed out with that one moment.
it's actually a channel I watch where a guy just tries random MREs, or at least opens them if they're not edible.
That was such a fun part of the second movie. It's like meals ready to eat. It's got everything you could need. Toilet tissue, water, and it's like
Earl's like, this tastes like toilet paper. Yeah,
it's like Earl, that is the toilet paper. Oh.
Yeah.
Weird that the toilet paper would be in the meal ready to eat, but
Yeah.
okay.
Old dude
But,
up on that fucking telephone tower had some MREs. He might still be alive. Yeah.
True.
Rest
Well,
in peace, man on the tower.
As long as it had water in it. But anyway, yeah, so that's such a cool scene where they just like blast this thing, and they have quite the collection. Like they've got shotguns, they've got what looks like was that one thing that he pulled down like an automatic? Was that an actual like fully automatic thing? Because it does seem to shoot pretty quick. Like Bert strikes me as the kind of character who would have maybe slightly illegal weapons. You know what I mean?
See, one thing that I noticed in this, and this has nothing to do with the what is it, Family Ties thing or whatever. He looked, when you really go watch it back, Bert looks a lot less comfortable firing the weapons than Reba does.
Great. I think you're right. Thinking back to it.
The way she was chatting about all the different guns and rattling off, I was like, wow.
Well, Reba, she's probably old school Hicks, so she's been around like at least half of them. I think that dude that played Bert maybe hadn't, because when you watch the footage of him actually firing, he's kind of like,
Yeah.
and then away from it and shit.
Like it gets to the point though, like where they're doing a lot of damage to it, but they're not really like, they don't seem to really be stopping it. Like the graboid like hasn't really got them, because it just seems to be kind of like, what the fuck is hitting me? Like, doesn't it seem to kind of like flail about a little bit, like it's not sure what's going on?
And I imagine that's how it would be if you were firing a bunch of small arms on a big animal like that. But once he hits it with that elephant gun, it does that like last wriggle, and then it rises. Doesn't it? Isn't that when it goes up into the ceiling and then comes down?
Well, it's kind of like as they're blasting it, like it's kind of like thrashing in different directions, and it goes up into the ceiling. And I think that's before he hits it with the elephant gun. And that was like watching that as a kid. It's like when he goes to the glass case and smashes that open, and it's like, why is that one in? And you're kind of like, this was sort of my impression of that scene, because I remember this pretty vividly. It's like, why is that one in the case? And and you see him like plop down the bullets, and they're just like
massive.
They're just like flashlight size, and it's like, oh wow, that's the special one. Because that's what you think when you're a kid. And like he loads it, and as soon as he hits it with it, it's just like boom. You almost see like the hole like punched into it, and it's like, damn.
You do. It comes right out the back of its head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only gun that I felt like was better in the series was when in the fourth movie, when he pulls out that giant basic cannon of a weapon.
Oh, in the second one, oh my god, I laughed so hard at it. In the second one, he has this like super hardcore like anti-tank sniper rifle. It's like a 70 cal or something. It's like 170 cal or something insane. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, there's one over there. I'm gonna snipe it with my really fancy gun. And he shoots it, and like the shockwave breaks all the windows like in the background. Right. And the creature he shoots with it just pops in half. It just like explodes in half. And like they're walking over it, and there's just like a big hole right behind it. Mm-hmm. And as they're walking by all these objects, that same big hole is in everything. Mm-hmm. And when they get to the truck that they were trying to like clear a path to, there is a very big hole right through the truck. Right. Like he shot out the engine and just destroyed it. And everybody just kind of looks at him and it's like, well, I didn't know. How could I have known?
That'd be like right there in most iconic scenes from the whole series.
Oh, it's so good. Like the second one is so good. God, yeah.
There's a big gun moment in all the ones I've seen. I mean, the third movie, he pulls out that freaking turret at the beginning of the movie.
Turret.
Then, even in the fourth one, the Wild West, they pull out that giant rifle that's basically a cannon.
And a pump gun, whatever that is. And they're like, what's a pump gun? And he's just like reading the manifest, and it's like, apparently for killing ducks.
Yeah, lots.
A great many ducks at once. He's just looking at it like, what the hell is this?
One of those weird, stupid things that I've watched for some reason multiple documentaries on, and that's punt guns. Like, dudes used to fire them from boats all crazy and kill like 100 ducks at once or something.
I like the moment at the start of the second one because the government of Mexico provided all the weapons. And Burt rolls up with his
absurd truck
wheels, and he flips open. You see all the C4 and all this other high explosives, and he's like, "You all could ask the government of Mexico for anything you wanted, and you got a case of dynamite."
That's fucking awesome. I love.
He's just like bragging. It's like high explosive, and the one guy.
I love such a thing in the world knowing that that's true.
Is there such a thing as low explosive, Bert? And it's like, why, yes, actually, there is. Shit, you win. So, see how hard it is to avoid going into the rest of the series? Like, this whole series is just so damn fun. Like, it cannot be helped.
It was so fucking solid and spawned so many sort of, I guess you could call them running jokes within the series that... It's hard not to continue this shit. Yeah.
Do the running jokes and things? Do they carry over to the TV show? I've never seen.
Not quite as much. The TV show does have some episodes where they try to have it. They try to do some different things. Like in some episodes, it's not a graboid related like monster they're dealing with, and those are some of the riskier. Excuse me. Those are some of the episodes that I think they kind of took more risk on. Like there's this whole strange subplot with like a secret government lab hidden somewhere in perfection where different creatures come from. But even those episodes work relatively well.
Yeah, that sounds pretty fucking cool, and like it could actually expand on the graboid mythology eventually if they learn more.
If they had been able to do more with it. Yeah, it was. Well, those episodes were based on something called Mixmaster, which is this compound that was developed at the lab that can basically cross-splice any animal with any other animal or even plant.
So have you looked into see if the series has been continued in comic book form at all?
I don't think it has.
Because that
Tremors has a surprisingly disappointing history of like tie-in things. I mean, there's the movies, and then there's the TV series, and then that's it. One thing though is the movie series is kind of still ongoing. They tried to do like another series with Kevin Bacon, but they tried to do it like the alternate sequel style. It's like, oh, they haven't been seen in 20 years, and there was no Bert, there was none of like the fun factor stuff that the series is known for. And I mean, the pilot itself was made, but it didn't get picked up. And I would kind of like to see the pilot if that's possible.
So would I.
But I mean, I do know Michael Gross left for South Africa. I think last month to start shooting Tremors 7. So we are still getting like Jamie Kennedy became a recurring character starting in 5. And I know he's not in this one. I know he's not in 7. I don't know if he's gone from the. I don't think he's gone from the series. I just think his character isn't in part 7.
I'm just a fan of a series that is self-aware enough to end itself when it should end.
Yeah, it keeps
That's what you gotta like.
It keeps the fun factor up. Like, I don't get bored with these movies.
Right, and
But,
neither have I up to this point. But I just think that they definitely need to end it. I don't know, maybe at like movie 10. Just end it, just for the sake of it.
The series will end when Michael Gross croaks. You know, that's what it'll take, and everyone will be really, really sad.
The next one that's slated to be possibly is called Tremors Island Fury at this moment, and it's
Island Fury. It's gonna be fucking great.
Island Fury
doesn't have a respected year that it's supposed to come out yet, but we'll see.
I'm guessing sometime next year, because I mean they're starting to film it now.
Kind of like ending the flagship series or whatever at a certain point. Like,
well,
look at Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, we got like some really sort of arguably the worst fucking sequels like 3 times in a row, and then
we got a very contentious reboot, which that reboot, like,
New Nightmare is where it should have just stopped. You know?
Well, I think that reboot could have been good. Like, it had a lot of really interesting ideas that it just used very, very poorly. Like, if you had gone over that script and like taken like 6 or 7 things from it and then just rewrote everything else, I think you could have had a really kick-ass story. Like doing something totally different with Freddy. But, you know, whoever, you know, if you're somehow listening, Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 writer, you know, sorry, but, you know, if that script had been like heavily rewritten and overhauled, and they had just kept like some of the ideas where it's like, oh, well, maybe Freddy was innocent, or, you know, like the thing with like, you know, the trauma of like victims of childhood trauma, like repressing their memories and then, you know, suddenly having to confront, you know, the person who did those things to them. Like, the alternate ending for that movie, like, watch the alternate ending for Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 and, you know, pay attention to kind of the emotional resonance of Nancy. I remember what you did to me. You know, and you'll get an idea of like how good it actually could have been if, you know, the script had been up to the challenge.
I will do that.
Like, because that alternate ending, just damn, I can't believe they went with the one they used on the theatrical. It's like, yeah, cut Freddy's head off. It's like, wow, that sucks. Whereas the other one, you know, like Freddy, it's like, you know, you were always my favorite. I can look like I did before, and he changes into like the human form that he was when he like violently molested Nancy, and it was like, oh my god, this is so like nasty, but like engaging.
A punch, dude. Like that's the.
And then she pulls him into reality, and he still looks like that, you know. And then she's just like beating the shit out of him with that baseball bat. It's like, I remember what you did to me. It's like, you know, you liked it, you son of a bitch. Oh damn! Like it was. I don't know. It was very well handled. Anyway, that's my digression. Back to the funness of Tremors. So they blast the shit out of the elephant gun, and it's like such like that triumphant music comes in. It's like, wow, I actually got one. And then it's like, the joke with when they call him, it's like, hey, Bird, here we got one. We killed that mother humper, and everybody's like, yeah. And I love that line with Kevin Bacon. It's like, congratulations and all, Bert, but be advised, however, there are 2 more mother humpers. Which, you know, anybody else, if you've seen this on TV, that's one of the things that they added a lot of lines for TV. And I think that's one of the things that they kind of tweak. It's like, we killed that damn monster is the TV cut. It's like, there are 2 more damn monsters.
And the thing is, it was already edited, because I think they originally had used much more clerk-style language and realized that, wait, we can't get away with this kind of language. So, but things like Mother Humpers, like they're not exactly the most subtle of tweaks to the script.
Yeah, who says that? Really?
You can tell the language was edited, was changed to make it PG-13. You know, that's a good thing. You know, I'm going to defend PG-13. Like, some PG-13 horror movies are pretty ass. Like,
Yeah,
Well, the only one I can think of is Prom Night. The Prom Night remake. That was very bad.
Like that has to be if you're like also just applying the modern view to PG-13.
No, true.
I'm pretty sure this was, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's stuff like, Prophecy the Monster movie or It's Alive.
Yeah.
They're all like G or PG rated,
It's kind of amazing. Like, I just got that in the mail from Shout the other day. And it's kind of amazing that movie. So that is actually, I could have sworn that movie was R. It's not R. Like, where is it? It's out of reach. Like, I'd have to get out of my headset rig to like go look at it. But I mean, that movie has one of maybe 3 or 4 monsters that still genuinely scare me every time I see it, even though I've seen the movie like 20 times.
Which one? Prophecy?
Yeah, like that mutant bear with like the melted boots. I mean, holy shit.
Fucking love it.
Like, I first saw that when I was in undergrad, which I went to an undergrad school that was pretty much in the woods. And so after I saw that movie, like, I had to like walk across campus at night through the freaking woods. And it was just like, I didn't have my headphones in. I was just on like the highest possible alert the entire time. It's like,
that one was PG.
They're gonna get me.
Yeah, I saw that as a kid, dude. Like, I was like,
oh man, how did you not die on the spot?
Oh, it's great.
That fucking bear.
Bear fetus and fucking that bear.
Just like the sounds it made. God damn. Anyway, I should save that for my eventual video on that movie. But so we get kind of like a triumphant moment. It's like, yeah, 2 down, 2 to go. And then the graboids figure out that they can knock down the buildings, and they flip Lester's trailer over and get him. And that was pretty fucked because Lester, it's like, get off the ground, and he climbs onto this like huge tractor tire, and they're like, no, that's not good enough. And you don't see anything happen to him other than he's suddenly like pulled down into the tire. Like, you don't see any the graboid, you don't see any tentacles, you don't see nothing. You just hear like poop. And like it does like this really crazy camera move, like as he's screaming, like it just pans up to Melvin. And Melvin's like, you guys gotta do something, because that's his dad.
Now, I don't know if I imagined it, but this time when I was watching that, I really paid attention to that part, and it sounded like you could hear him cough right before the end where he stops making exactly.
Oh man. But that begins kind of like the down note. So this is sort of the low point of the movie before things get kind of hopeful again. And so they hatch this plan to, their plan to escape is, so a lot of the movie revolves around, it's like, oh, there's this old Jeep trail that we can use to get to the mountains to get to Bixby. Yeah.
Never
because that's worked so well every other time.
That was their mistake.
And, all the vehicles that could make the trip have been trashed. However, they have this idea. It's like, wait a minute, there's a bulldozer over there. So they hatch this plan to connect this really heavy like tractor trailer to the bulldozer, and then use that to like roll out of there. And so they set up a distraction, like they set that like riding mower to like just go off by itself, and have the graboids chase it while Val or Earl makes a run for the bulldozer.
It's Val, if you remember, right? Because he ends up smacking him one.
Yeah, like we mentioned that earlier. Like they do the rock paper scissors thing, and Val loses, but he's like, well, okay. And then he like elbows Earl and like jumps off the roof himself. And the plan pretty much works. Like there's some kind of suspense there when like the mower like flips and the creatures come back early. But eventually they're able to.
Where he's like lifting up his cowboy boots. Like to me, that's for some reason like with the cowboy boots and the dust and the tongues or whatever the fuck.
They're like trying to find him. Yeah, that was a good tense scene.
One of the most like iconic moments in the series to me.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil everything, but so plus we're running a little long, so I'm trying to trying to get to it. We have too much fun on these. That's the problem. But anyway, so the Boulder plan, for the most part, kind of works. So they're able to pick up everybody who's surviving, and they're most of the way to the mountains. And all of a sudden, the bulldozer falls into a sinkhole because the graboids figured out, it's like, oh, we can just like dig a ditch that the tractor falls into, which that was kind of a
pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, that was a good demonstration that the creatures, again, aren't mindless, like that they can learn.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to make a run for that rock. So, like, Bert has those homemade explosives that we mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of an important point to bring up. It's like, oh, the explosion scares them. And Rhonda is like, it's like, well, I think well, they're so sensitive to vibrations, like, it hurts them. Like, they have to run. So it's not, something that they can actually adapt to. Like, they just cannot handle, like, such a strong stimulus.
Right.
Which really makes sense for, like, the final scene. So anyway, they end up stuck on that rock. And Bert's giving his, like, defeatist talk. It's like, if we're about to starve, I'll just walk out there, light the fuse, and let them take me down. Boom. And it's delivered like so grimly, right? And it's like his wife is like, good Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And then Val's like, it's not a bad idea. Excuse me? I mean, it gives me an idea. And so they come up with this idea they're going to, like, lasso one of the bombs, like light the fuse, like throw it out there, and then just like drag it along until it gets like taken by until it gets swallowed. Mm-hmm. And it does work the first time. Like, that was such a fun scene. And it's like, yes, they might get out of this. So they kind of have one graboid that's been shown to be like smarter than the other ones. It's the one that they distinguish it because it's the one that grabbed their truck at the beginning, and so it's missing one of its tentacles. Yes, they call it Stumpy. Yeah. And Stumpy takes the bait, but spits the bomb back out onto the rock, and it scatters them off the rock. So they're standing out there, like, it still can't find them, like, it's right in front of them, and it pretends to leave. And he's like, but they only have one bomb left. And this is kind of where we sort of get our Jaws moment. Because it's like, this one's not falling for it. I have an idea. And so Val just takes off running, and the creature goes, like, right after him. And it's like, he's looking for the lighter, and he's like, oh, shit. And, Rhonda has the lighter, so she's running with him. It's like, wait! And it just it's both an exciting moment and kind of clumsy, too. Because you can tell they haven't quite thought this completely through.
Mm-hmm.
And so
yeah, we do get a nice little comedy moment, because when they blow up the one creature, they did not account for the where the
splatter
is going to go, and it is fun that Melvin gets a pretty good face full of it.
Yeah, that's a fun thing about this movie. Is it's like when you blow up graboids, there's always this like really gross like orange goo that flies everywhere. To the point where in some of the sequels they just go completely ham with it.
It always smells.
Oh yeah, that was one thing too. It's like whenever the first few times they encounter the graboid, like we get a lot of lines. It's like, Jesus, does it smell like that because it's dead? It's like, oh, the live ones are worse than the dead ones. And when the series came out, I was really obsessed with it. I was like 13 or whatever. And they used to have a website where you could read like all of this like graboid biology stuff. And apparently the reason they smell so bad is because they basically pee through their skin as part of, how they move through the ground. Like the acids help them get through the ground more, that they excrete through their skin help them move a little bit more easily. And so that's why so pretty much the graboids like smell like pee and ammonia. So that's kind of, I feel a little embarrassed that I know that from a long dead website. But anyway, so they're at the same location they were when we first met Val and Earl, like where they were camping. Like it's just like this big cliff. And so the graboid is, barreling straight for them. Val breaks most of the fuse off, so the fuse is like super short. And like he's waiting for it to get close enough, and he lights the bomb and he throws it really far behind the graboid. And they're like, "Oh, you missed!" And it blows up, and the graboid like has to do its like
Fucking
panic run thing. And so Val doesn't dodge, so that it's coming straight for him, like it's not trying to turn, and it's also panicking. And then he dives out of the way, and it shoots right out the side of the cliff, and like splits apart like on the sharp rocks below. Like it falls what looks like a couple 100 feet onto some sharp rocks. And they're like, "Yeah!" And he's like, "Well, I just kind of occurred to me, stampede." It's like the best fallback.
Yeah.
And then we get like our kind of wrap up moment with, it's like, okay, well, we're actually going to Bixby this time. We've managed to fix everything. And Earl doesn't really say it, but he's kind of like, go talk to the girl, damn it. And it's like, it's like, well, why would she like me? She's going for a PhD. And I forget exactly like what he says, but he's like, hi. Or does anybody remember the lines? Because I just remember like them aggressively kissing each other and then like credits.
That's pretty much my memory of it. And I just watched it today.
It's like, yeah, about time. Like everything about this movie is just so fun.
And like Brandon was saying earlier, like that was in response to the first test screening they did, where the audience was like, "Oh, we wanted them to kiss," But I did see the scene that apparently was the original one, and I kind of, the two of them driving to Bixby, and then
it was very flat.
Do you have a light or something? Like he was trying to light his cigarette or something? Like, well, shoot, Rhonda has the lighter. Guess we'll have to go back and get it. And then you see him do a U-turn and go back. It was like, same basic outcome, but it was a little more subtle, Yeah. But people don't like subtle.
I thought it was kind of nice to see him have sort of like a growth moment. It's like, where it's not, it's like, you don't date anybody who doesn't meet that stupid list of yours. And he's like, hey, the list is solid. And then like, he meets Rhonda, he gets close to Rhonda and is like, this list stuff is bullshit. What was I doing? What was wrong with me?
See, that's I still say that makes the movie kind of like progressive in its own way.
Yeah.
I hate to use that word. Like so.
Well, I am very progressive, so it's fine.
Well, I get it, but I don't want to just always hear that attached to everything.
Some people misuse it.
It was smart in its way at the time.
So I think I kind of like the moment like that in the second movie too, because I know we keep kind of jumping into like the second movie, which is so much more of a direct sequel because the stuff in the first Tremors ties in a lot more to the stuff in the second Tremors than it does to like the third or the fourth or whatnot. But in the beginning of the second Tremors, in Earl's trailer, like he has like a pinup. He has like a old pinup from the 70s from Playboy, and like somebody who's in his visiting his trailer is like, "Whoa, what's with that?" And he's like, "Oh, that's Miss 1974. She's there to remind me not to worry about things not to obsess over things I'm never going to have."
Yeah.
And then,
and that kind of touches on the whole, sort of archetype of a perfect woman thing that Val had in the first one.
Exactly. And then like later in the movie, he's spending more time with that lady scientist, who's about his age, because they're both. So Earl is a much older person than Val. And so they're stuck on a roof again, and he's talking to this older scientist, and they're just kind of sharing information about themselves. And she's like, I was a playmate once. I was even a playmate once. He's like, wait, Miss whatever 1974, and she just kind of gingerly like does the pose, and he's like,
Yes.
Yep. And so it's kind of like a, you never know sort of thing. Like there's some good subtle, like good messaging in here. It's like, maybe things aren't as bad as you think they are. Maybe.
Well, I think even in the original fucking Tremors, like it's there for sure. That whole Rhonda role, to me, is sort of like an awesome example of sort of feminism in movies, I guess, done in a way that's not fucking cringe.
You're Dr. Sadler of the generation,
It's more of like an even footing thing. It's like, you're just treated like as a normal character. Like, your personhood is respected.
Right.
Maybe that's the wrong way to phrase it, but it's like
you know what I'm saying though. It's like they didn't try too hard to do it in Tremors. It was just done. This girl.
She's just like a character. Like they don't make a big deal about
her being like a strong woman character or anything. And to me, that's what it should fucking be.
Like those values are just kind of assumed. Those values of equality are just kind of assumed rather than, kind of
bestowed.
I don't want to say forced because that's kind of loaded language. But yeah. I've had too many beers. We could go into another hour-long thing. Rhonda is such a good character, though. Like, I mean,
she is.
Everybody in this whole series is done so well. I mean, except for maybe a couple characters in like 4, 5, and 6 are a little thin.
In terms of the first movie, though, they fucking hold it down, dude. And I was trying to. Honestly, this last watch got me wanting to time it. Because I don't think there's a 5-minute period in Tremors where
you're bored.
5 minutes you don't go from like character dialogue to action.
Like the writing is so tight. Exactly.
It's just flows from start to finish without you ever feeling like there's like even a 5-minute period where you're bored.
I agree.
Exactly. Like it's just so. Everything works. Like I can't think of anything that's really like a low point in the first Tremors. I mean, the other sequels aren't as tight. Like they do have kind of some iffy parts, but this first one is just. I mean, the town is called Perfection, and the first Tremors is kind of perfection. Yeah. It's about as close as you can get to like a great monster movie with a lot to chew on. There's character depth, there's character development, like there's excellent effects, which now that we've wrapped the movie, we should probably go into effects. Like a lot of these effects were like miniatures and stuff. Like I know how they did them, and it still works. Like
I think we should hear from Brandon and Jake.
Yeah, we should. Since I have to go to the bathroom. So
I was just going to say your comment just now.
Guys.
I'm sure they would use that if they have not already. It's a good tagline for a monster film. A monster film with a lot to chew on.
Yeah. There you go. Well, they had some pretty cool. I mean, of course, you had everything from hand puppets to you had one fully not fully automated, but like a full-sized one, like the one that busted through the wall, the first one that died. Then you had the one that popped out of the ground, the head part, where you actually had one of the guys, for realism, get inside it and put on like an oxygen mask inside the darn thing to get buried in the ground in order to help make it more realistic when it popped up. It's a lot of cool. I mean, they kind of got rid of a lot of the practical effects, unfortunately. In the later movies, a lot of them, but the practical effects, I really feel practical effects are getting to be a lost art. I am glad to hear that they're trying to bring back more of those in the new Ghostbusters film. But
Ghostbusters.
yeah, with the original cast, at least sans Rick Moranis, but and the one Harold Ramis, but yeah, they're going to be using more practical effects. I really feel practical effects are almost a lost art these days, and seeing them done effectively, in my opinion, looks much better than a lot of CG.
Oh, for sure. I would argue that this one holds up better than the sequel simply because it's, light on the blood and gore. It has the practical effects that still kind of hold up, and you don't have to look at like some CGI ass blaster or something and try to excuse that. Like Tremors 1 fucking still looks good.
I think so too.
Some of the newer ones don't look good. They just don't. They're fun, but they look like ass.
But in any case, I think the special effects, I think they progressed as the film went forward. I mean, you got from the smaller stuff, like the part that I will always remember is that head in the ground. I mean, that image will stay with me from the film. So, and sometimes I mistake it for the part where the doctor and his wife go down, but it's the realism of what if there were creatures like this,
Right.
actually in the fucking ground, and what would we do with it if it happened?
I think they lost some of that in the sequels because they did more like special effects, obviously.
It's like, have you seen the movie Sand Sharks? It's basically like, what if Tremors was done very cruddily?
Or even Shark.
Hey, I loved Sand Shark. That was actually
to be
really
fair,
fun.
to be fair, Sand Sharks does know what it is and like has a good time, but it's like, I mean, for a lot of the people in the generation I think it was made for, it's like, just go watch Tremors, man. You'll get the same. You'll get the same thing with a lot more. Oomph.
I'd say go watch Sharknado. But it's just
I suppose it really does. So there's been some discussion that I was involved in a little while ago where it's like there's not necessarily such a thing as a bad movie per se, just a movie you're not in the mood for. Because even like a really terrible movie can be like an amazing experience under the right circumstances.
true, but that does not make it not a terrible movie. I mean, when you make that kind of a movie, you know that a lot of times you're making a terrible movie. And fucking.
Well, that's the idea. There was a thing you were talking about that with the bad movie, but they were talking about that on the when I was listening to the Rage Select podcast earlier on this week. One of the things they were talking about is a similar concept, except with video games, where the idea, because Death Stranding has gotten a lot of flack lately, and they're talking about video games with mechanics that aren't fun. But is it not fun, or is it just not fun to you?
Well, there's that. And is it, sometimes I think there's supposed to be like unfun mechanics in video games, where the overcoming is the thing that you take satisfaction from.
That's the thing is that's one of that's why I like movies in general, is that there's always a movie that's for everybody. I don't think that there is such a thing as a universally hated movie. I think every movie has an audience.
I'm trying really hard to think of.
I think we can try hard.
Justice League. Suicide Squad?
Universally hated movie, though.
Suicide Squad's pretty ass. I wonder if that counts.
There are people who like Suicide Squad.
Did I say that out loud? Oh dear.
But that's the thing, is it's a hard thing because people surprise me. There are movies I thought were terrible, but I've had even on this particular show, I've had people who are like, no, that movie is like really good. I mean, I remember somebody telling me on this originally that
there might even be someone who enjoyed disaster movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Disaster movie. Terrible.
Anyway, so I'm guessing we covered effects, I'm guessing, while I was gone, right? Because I didn't remember as much about how they did the effects as Brandon or Jake did.
There was a lot of practical effects, and they were well done.
Yeah, they were fucking spectacular. I think some of them were miniatures, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I couldn't tell. Like, that's how well this holds up. Like, I think I said on Twitter earlier, it's like this movie is one of the best cases for practical effects.
I think that scene we were talking about, the scene in Bert's bunker with the attack from the
that was a miniature. I remember now.
Yeah, and they talked.
There's one composite shot that you can see the seams on, where it's like Bert's like really far in the foreground and the graboid is really far in the background, and you can tell. But it's very brief. It's maybe kind of the only seam I notice in the movie. Now that I really, really focus and think about it.
Was that scene at the very end where they took the last graboid and drove it off the cliff? Wasn't that a miniature? Out of the cliff?
I think that might have been a miniature too, but it doesn't look like it didn't. The effect worked well enough that I didn't really think it could be a miniature when I saw it. Like, it's still, the illusion works.
I know that the only full-length one was the one that they had that they were looking at. It's like, oh, look, I've got this, and...
Yeah, after it crashes into that concrete barrier, and, like, they have, like, a lot of time to, like, hang out and dig it up. I found the ass end!
It was kind of a funny moment there.
I mean, this movie has a lot of funny moments, and I didn't want to spoil all of them, you know? But anyway, and then I guess moving on to music, this movie had really effective music, but not a lot of music. I mean,
honestly, can't say that I remember any of it, you know? So if there was like score during those parts, I don't remember it.
This movie follows the philosophy that if you notice the score has failed.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought a lot of the sound design was really good, because there was this like weird kind of sound for a lot of like the creatures.
Like special effects.
It's almost like a rattlesnake sort of sound.
Know, I fucking definitely noticed that, and like the scenes obviously where sound is a big deal. I noticed it, but I can't say that I remember a single fucking...
Yeah, there was music, but just not all that much of it. And what was there, like, it was tight, it was focused, it was exactly what you needed.
Right now, too. Yeah, like, I've never noticed the soundtrack to Tremors.
It's mostly like stings and like the country songs kind of here and there.
I remember the country. I remember the country feel to it, like the.
That's because it had Reba McEntire.
It definitely felt like the setting.
Exactly, like it all worked, and it wasn't like intrusive, but it also wasn't necessarily noticeable either.
Right.
I don't really remember paying attention to the music at all, and I don't think you're supposed to while you're watching.
Right.
You're supposed to be enjoying the comedy, the adventure, the horror, paying attention to all that other stuff.
It does sound like it enhances that small town vibe, though. If you do notice the music.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Totally agree on that.
So anyway, I guess getting to favorites. So I think we were giving favorites when I had to take my go address something break. So that was your favorite scene, right, Dave, with the head?
Well, that one, and I guess I would have to say the Jaws moment. Well, to me, I feel like it's a Jaws moment.
When he faces off with the graboid, like at the finale?
No, the part where he comes up underneath the store, and he just opens up his jaws like.
Ah, okay. Like, I keep thinking Jaws moment. When you say Jaws moment, I keep thinking like, "Smile, you son of a bitch," because that's definitely the vibe I got during the climax.
Right.
No, when Jaws eats the fucking ship captain, and his jaws are like going gnawing on him. That's what I think of when I think of this graboid eating Chet. So.
Right.
Okay, well that works. It's kind of hard for me. I love this movie so much. Like, it's very hard for me to like pick a singular favorite. So I think growing up, I think my favorite scene was when they figure out like what they can do with the bombs to, when they're throwing rocks to like lure the graboids, and then like they light the fuse and like throw it out there and start dragging it, and it like and the first one like takes the bomb. Like, I think that was my favorite scene when I was younger. That tied with like the shootout at Bert's, because that was like so cool. Like, I was really in I was a big like Super Nintendo gamer back then, because what kid wasn't. And like that scene, the scene in the rec room where they just like blast the graboid, like felt so much like a video game level. Like I used to like do like a lot of kind of daydream writing, and at one point, I have no idea what happened to it. At one point, I wrote out like an entire like Tremors video game, and that was like one of my levels that I was like the most proud of. It was like this whole like shootout, and so I think I would say my favorite scene is kind of a tie between those two.
Mm-hmm.
Although now that I'm older, I like a lot of the jokes more, like especially like that introduction, like when we first get to really know like Earl and Val. Like, I enjoy that so much now.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, who wants to be next?
Oh, well, I don't know that I can narrow down a specific favorite moment. There's a lot of little bits that are fun. It's kind of hard to say.
It's a tough call.
Yeah, it is. I think some of the moments that I've alluded to already with like the different some of the jokes that are stated. I know there were some other good lines that I'm just not remembering right now. I feel like Val had some really good lines that I just can't remember. I feel like he had a couple good ones. But just in general,
Everybody knows about these creatures, Earl. We just didn't tell you.
yeah. But yeah, there were some moments, and they particularly probably involving either nothing specific is coming to mind. I haven't already mentioned. Like, the scene in the bunker was really good. There were some great, little clips, like the clip about the cannon. I just thought was hilarious. Things like that. Yep.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Mo?
Favorite scenes for me is definitely when they're pumping Melvin's shit and the shit explodes on them, like a sequence where they go into like, we're the fuck out of here.
There's like one bad experience away from like really doing it, and then that just seals the deal. I think we lost Dave.
Definitely the whole like Jaws scene, as he called it, in the store where Chang gets eaten. Like, that stuff freaks me the fuck out for some reason.
Yeah, I like how you remember how they have a callback to that in like one of the later ones? It's like graboids. Who gave him that name? Walter Chang. then they ate him. So, well, I can see why you'd maybe feel obligated to go with that then.
Right.
Probably one of my favorite scenes, though, that a lot of people wouldn't choose is where it shows that girl like on top of the shelves. And they're like, "You got to jump" or whatever, and she's like, "I can't." And then the shelves tip over and she falls out that window, and then she ends up on the water tower.
Yeah, but at first it looks like she's gone, and he's like, "No!"
Yeah, I love that whole idea for that shit, like
faking you out.
Right out
It did look like her pants got like snagged on like one of the shelves or something, or at least that's what I thought I saw. So that scene made, I guess, a bit more sense to me when she was like, "Oh, I suddenly can't jump," and it's like, yeah, that's why. But yeah, that's a good part too.
I like that part. Yeah.
What about you, Brandon?
I don't know. Whenever I see that septic tank scene, I keep thinking of the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Well, I mean, when you think of sewage, I mean, it's hard to not think of that if you see National Lampoon.
Well, you know, man emptying his toilet on my front lawn.
Like,
but you know, my favorite scene in that is it's got to be the one where they're in the bunker fighting it out with all the guns. It's just such a really cool and almost epic combat scene, just so over the top. It's just hard not to love it.
I still really love, too, the whole, like, subtle, you know, when he breaks the glass with that elephant gun, it's clearly supposed to be, like, the emergency glass, you know?
Yeah.
Break-in case of elephant.
It is one hell of an emergency. Alien invasion. But are we getting Dave back? Like, where'd Dave go?
His computer had to be restarted.
Oh man. Well, hopefully the stream is still on and you're still able to listen to our. Oh God, what was that?
Somebody had an emergency.
You're still listening to our nuttiness. At least we got Dave covered on that. So anyway, normally we'd have an additional items of note section, but I think what we kind of do is we sort of spread all this info out across the episode. So yeah, you got to hear plenty of our favorites. I mean, this movie has some of like the best sequels of any franchise to ever exist, in my opinion.
Agreed.
And I guess I'm not alone, which is good. So, I mean, definitely go check them out if you have the ability to do so. I don't know if they're actually streaming anywhere. Like, I think Tremors 5 and 6 are on Netflix. But, you know, at least go check this one out.
They seem to show up randomly. Like, 4, 5, and 6 seem to just frequent streaming sites infrequently. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and, you know, 3 is pretty good, too. I mean, 3 is definitely the weakest of the original trilogy. But I think that's largely just because 1 and 2 are just such strong, solid films.
And I mean that set that Walmart set is not rare by my knowledge, but it's a pretty cool steelbook set, and it has all 6 films. It was $30 at the time, which wasn't bad for 6 films.
That's not
terrible. And they're all Blu-ray too, so that's also a.
So it's roughly like $5 a piece. Oh, hey, welcome back, Dave.
Sorry,
we did get your favorite. We did get your favorite, right?
Yeah,
we opened with that. Okay.
And then the TV series wasn't too bad either, though. The TV series. Find the pilot on physical media of the Kevin Bacon show.
I don't think you can find the pilot of the Kevin Bacon reboot that they tried this past year. I don't think you can get that anywhere that I am aware of. Like, I don't think you can even
be able to find it.
I don't think it's even available via dubious sources. I'll just put it that way. Like, I don't think there's any way to actually get it.
Well,
Um,
so if you're listening,
legal
Kevin
or
Bacon,
otherwise.
provide us the.
If you have access to the file, my Twitter handle is the Crypt of Horrors. I don't know why I did that in The Simpsons dial a crime voice. You have selected regicide. If you know the name of the king or queen being murdered, press. Anyway, so in summation, this movie is just so good, and unless you're dead inside, you will enjoy it. Like some of the sequels, maybe not quite so much, but you should have a good time either way. So I mean, I cannot recommend this enough, like as a solid monster movie. One thing I, as a scientist, like I wanted to address was, how exactly would the graboids be classified? And at first I was thinking arthropod, but I think they'd probably end up being like in their own class because they have so many weird lifestyle traits.
Well, if they are indeed a Precambrian life form that predates everything else, they probably are in a completely separate. But
Exactly.
It may have been convergent evolution. Yeah. Seemed like they had
the idea.
Some of the sequels did kind of toy with that because there seem to be like regional forms. Like in Tremors 5, it deals with like an African continent version of the species, which has like a similar but still very different like morphology and life cycle. And it just kind of gets crazier from there. So we're just gonna say they're in their own group. But anyway, so with that recommendation said, we're going to go into the, who the hell are we and why should we care what we think portion of the show. I'm the Crypt of Horrors. I'm a horror collector living here in Milwaukee while attending a master's program for biology. And you can find me on Twitter at the Crypt of Horrors, just kind of hanging out. I also have my own channel for my horror collecting. You guessed it, the Crypt of Horrors, where I go out and find used stuff, and I have pretty good luck most of the time. So plus I get like good pre-orders, and it's a fun time. Like I enjoy sharing all the stuff that I'm interested in. I also have an Instagram for my horror collection that I'm really lazy about updating, but you can follow me there anyway at, you guessed it, I used that twice, damn. Well, I'm the Crypt of Horrors everywhere. Follow me across many different venues and dimensions. And yeah, we'll have fun just talking about horror and drowning ourselves in it. Perhaps too much.
Yeah, let's review around. So
yeah, we've been working on a review of Shout Factory's The Blob Blu-ray, which is freaking incredible for quite a while now. So I mean, I am in school too, so that kind of has to take up most of my time. So that's why this content is so very, very late. But we've got that hopefully being shot soon. Like I'm actually putting serious work into it. So I'm making like a script so that I don't forget any of the stuff I want to talk about. And also I'm supposed to be reviewing Bad CGI Sharks pretty soon. Yes, that's the title of the movie. And yes, it looks epic. So there's kind of a lot of projects to look forward to, as long as I can get the time. I really wish I didn't have to sleep, like, bodies are gross.
yeah.
But anyway, so with that, how about who looks ready to go? How about you, Mo? Who are you and what do you do?
I'm just Mo. I hang out with these guys, talk about movies. Sometimes, occasionally, on Drunken Master Studios, I review some flicks. But I think honestly, you should just check out, Crypt of Horror. He just recently did a fall haul, little spectacular.
Oh yeah, I tried shooting. When I was doing my collecting videos, it would be like, okay, here's everything I found this week, and it'd be like a half-hour video. This time I tried like splitting it into like more digestible like chunks. So it's like, here's everything used, here's everything new, here's everything I got in the mail. So hopefully you liked that format.
Yeah, it was tight, dude. And definitely check out Septum Sin versus the World. These guys are my main source for new like movies and shit. I don't know. I do stuff on my own channel. I review movies and crap. But just I guess go ahead and sub to that as well. I don't know. You're probably better off watching these guys. They're a lot better at this shit than I am. So yeah.
Definitely more organized than me. Ooh.
I have my own little charm, but I mostly suck, dude. So.
Yeah, you're trying. So, like I can tell how sleepy we're getting towards the end of this.
Yeah, we're all like worn down. I'm going to try and give the lineup for next for the votes. So you all hit me next to last.
Fucking Jake's beer.
Yeah, Jake, who are you?
I'm Goldbookie Jake. I frequently guest on Septum Sin versus the World, and we have recently done a Criterion themed video because it's Criterion month, and we have a lot of fun with that. And largely at Brandon's behest, we're prepping a NIS America retrospective. I'm still far from complete with the series, but I'm working on it right now. Genshin Second Generations, good stuff. And I do have my own channel, Kotobuki Jake YouTube channel, with just a few videos. One day this will change, but it's dedicated to nature and the natural world. A Hub Pages page dedicated to the media, Kotobuki Jake. Also, not really updated much, but it's there. You might find some fun stuff if you are so inclined. And mostly I am just a reviewer, reader, writer, just fan of media in general.
Oh, with your Criterion thing, did you guys get the Godzilla Criterion? The Godzilla set?
Yeah.
Because if you get anything at all during this Criterion sale, get that Godzilla set. It is so dank. It's like
It is, but because of the price tag, I'm looking at it for July instead. I am working on a few titles, but this time of year, it's hard to. It's 112 on sale, which is still pretty damn good. But
I mean, that is quite a lot. I'm lucky enough. I knew somebody who has like a membership, so I got it. I got like the extra 10% off there too.
Right.
Yeah, I found I found like two rare finds that I just couldn't pass up on. So that took all of the money I had that could have gone towards
well, that's understandable.
Mm-hmm.
The dudes legit though give you like the best up to date info on what's coming out, and, like what they've picked up. So definitely a channel you should subscribe to.
Yeah.
All of you guys, like even you guys in the chat here.
We have people in chat.
Septum Sin ain't fucking around.
Oh.
Oh, we do? Oh, we have people.
My eyes are starting to stop working. I woke up at like 9-ish for class today. And I've been going ever since. I don't know. I need to go to bed.
Videos are usually what I listen to at work, man. Like I listen to their new pickups and their new releases every week.
We appreciate it. Actually, I guess I can.
Good.
I say I can go on ahead at this point, I guess, because after this it goes back to Dave. Of course, I am Septum Sin versus the World. We are a media page that glorifies and the collection of physical media. Well, maybe not glorifies it, but definitely showcases it. And we talk about the various joys of it, what's being released for the week, and the things that we pick up, as well as those top 10 lists. And we are definitely going to be trying to hit, we did a Criterion earlier, as Jake had said. We're also doing a pretty awesome NIS retrospective coming next week. That's going to be a big thing. It is really sad because this group, it produces fairly good video games, but they went into anime for a while and then they fell out. So it's a sort of just not only that, but it's kind of a study as to what is it that got them out of the anime business. So it's going to be an interesting run once we get up to getting it completed. I'm also going to be reviewing, at actually day after tomorrow, it's going to be up, a review for the original Out and About the movie, which I am happy to have a official copy of, which is another talks about another YouTuber, What Movie One, and definitely now I might have to dive in because I have been listening to Drunken Master Studios' coverage of some of these, including a group of movies, or at least the first one for Violent Shit, I believe it was, which I have the 5-film collection for that series.
I do
Maybe
too, but
I need to watch it.
But I also have many different copies of the film on release, which maybe I should do a video for you to put up in that video.
Maybe we could do a video together on it. That'd be pretty cool.
That would be cool. And speaking of videos that we're planning on doing together, I also do work with Inside Movies Galore. There is a plan that before our next week, which will wrap up, by the way, our movies to be thankful for the movie Terminator, we will be doing several of us. I'm guessing it's going to be. I know Jake said he's willing to work with it, and I think you, Dave, and Mo, you guys also were on board for covering Thanksgiving 3.
Yes.
Oh God, there are 3 of them.
Yeah,
well, no, there's 2 of them. But
there's 2 of them.
Oh right. I forgot
And
about that crazy trick they did.
This one is
Assholes.
worse. It's worse.
So, as a way of celebrating the Thanksgiving season, also,
Can we just watch Attack of the Killer Tomatoes? Like a
Yeah.
movie trying to be bad that's actually kind of good.
Nice.
Well, I mean, the good thing is that you don't have to be involved in that discussion, Dustin, because it's a prior to.
I do what?
It was a voluntary. It's a prior to our Terminator show.
Ah,
You know what? Fuck it.
So-
I'll throw it out right here. I'm working on like a new Septum Sen versus the World intro that is going to be more Guar-like, and it is definitely going to
did you
go
say
down.
Guar-like?
I did. And it's going to go down with Dan from Rebel Gaming Club, so we're working on that as well.
Odorous is gonna come out and like.
I'm still waiting
kick
for
your
you to
ass
do
or
that
something,
metal cover of that song from that other one that
Camp
was it
Camp
Killer
Out?
Camp Out? Yeah, that would be an awesome thing to do, a metal cover of that song.
For sure.
But the movies, we have a really cool list upcoming for December. December, we are going to go back to our usual, which is movies that kind of hit the winter theme or the holiday theme. And we've got a really neat list upcoming. And I will list them out here. And you can find them in various places throughout Facebook. But, of course, if you want to support us directly, you can vote for it on the Delusions of Grandeur page, which is Dave's review page. And one of the only ones that will support a poll of more than two choices. The movies that we have come up with for vote are Black Xmas, which is the remake of Black Christmas.
The 2006 one.
Especially since they're going to be remaking it again, and it's coming out this December. Enemy Mine, and actually thus far I count 2 votes for Black Xmas and 1 for Enemy Mine, just as it's been up already. Devil's
that like-
Pass. Yeah, this is on the movies, TV, and Real Talk section that I'm looking at this from.
So we get to vote ourselves, right?
Yes, I would encourage ourselves to vote on the Delusions of Grandeur page, of course.
So I'm not voting for my shit. Like, I'm definitely.
That's always encouraged not to vote for your own, but you can if you really, really want to. But Devil's Pass, Alive, Jack Frost, and I'm talking about the horror movie, not the feel good one.
I always imagine like some poor kid making that mistake.
And
And like, yes, we get like the sleazy murderous snowman story instead of like this random family comedy.
The animated classics
probably are not going to get picked very often. Like,
Well, it's
animated-
neither one really. Like they're both pretty crap from what I understand.
Devil's
the
Pass
animated-
is actually pretty good for what it is. But,
Oh,
I need
anyway.
to watch those. I need to watch them both, but it's also, of course, Tokyo Godfathers, an animated classic. Santa's Sleigh, which is also a slasher classic. I mean, they
You guys
killed Fran
better vote
Drescher
for
in the
Santa's
first scene.
Sleigh. Like I
mean-
am going to advocate for Santa's Sleigh. Like it rocks
that's
so
another-
much.
I didn't know what we were doing here. Alive is kind of one of those selections where that's a bit more serious than any of us really want. Yeah.
Hey, well, it fits the themes. The themes are winter, holiday. Any of
Santa
that. So,
is a demon who's forced to give out presents, and he breathes fucking fire. How can
That
you say
sounds
no
fun.
to that?
That
the
sounds fun. Eating
best
people
thing-
first that you were on a plane
I'm
with.
surprised that no one has picked Santa Claus versus the Martians.
it will
Fuck is
come.
that?
Maybe we'll do a Christmas in July.
Oh, it's fucking
Do a Christmas because we feel like it series. Just do it in like mid-August or something.
Why not?
There's one that we have that I'm surprised we haven't done. I swear we did this one. We must have done one that reminded. I know we did Black Christmas, but Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Nope. We
I
have
could
not.
have sworn to God we did that, but
Nope.
everybody else says no, so I
Nope.
think I might have imagined.
something that
Yeah.
I would have assumed you guys would have done already.
Yeah, well,
Which
because
is a
Shout
classic.
Factory put Silent Night Deadly Night out on
Yeah.
collector Blu-ray in 2017, and then they put
They even had the figure.
sequel, and then they put the sequel out in Christmas 2018. And so, because I was like super into those, I think I might have thought that we did an episode on them, but I guess we didn't,
No, we did not.
which
I
I still think is incorrect because we've done so many episodes at this point. I mean, this is episode like what 200 something.
If you want to find it, it's not there.
Huh.
the one that the one that I really want to win, which is Star Wars: The Christmas Special.
You know, if you have enough mind-altering substances, that is amazing.
It's got there is an animated scene in there with the
Boba
bounty
Fett.
hunter that's actually really good, and the rest of the movie no, but
Oh, fun fact!
but
There's a scene in The Mandalorian, like the new series, that they took from the holiday special, and it's like, oh shit! Like there's a scene in the holiday special where Boba Fett is using like this specific weird-looking weapon, and they use it in the Mandalorian.
A lot of people slept on the fucking Ewoks movies too, man. And
Well, I
forgot
mean,
those. They're classics.
they're better than Rogue One by like a freaking mile.
I don't know about that, but
I hated Rogue One just beyond belief. It bored me so much.
To each their own.
I would rather watch that Xmas special twice.
loved Rogue One.
We should eventually do some Star Wars films down the way so we can get to some of those.
That's why we have to start with the Christmas special.
Well,
Any
I'll be-
case,
There we go.
Yeah, it's sort of funny. Like, I reacted to that Christmas special kind of the way I reacted to The Room. It's like, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. Wait a minute. What do you mean there's another hour and a half left?
she was so pretty. The sequel to one that we did earlier on She Was So Pretty 2, To Be Good for Goodness Sake, which
That should be fun.
I've been wanting to watch. I've had my copy for a while, so I would be very interested in getting in touch with that. And then, of course, the classic that just got a Blu-ray release, by the way, Santa with Muscles, starring Hulk Hogan.
I still have a hard time believing that that's a real movie, and you didn't just like make that up to troll the post.
What is it?
The poll.
What is it?
I still have trouble believing it's a real movie.
It's Santa with Muscles. Hulk Hogan is basically this terrible corporate businessman, and he ends up somehow in a Santa suit and gets hit in the head, so he loses his memory, and he was convinced by somebody else that he's Santa Claus, so he ends up trying to save a group of orphans from being evicted from their home.
No.
Yeah. Something that you could only, something that
Is
time
it-
period.
Is it on DVD at all?
It is on DVD. There's actually a 4-pack that was going around that I have for the film on. It's just recently gotten a re-release, which is really cool. If I had the money, I'd definitely grab that just because it would be fun.
What
To
is
say
it
I
called
had it.
again?
Santa with Muscles. And of course, if any of you who are looking to vote want to look at the posters, I also make sure to upload posters of each of these films so that you can take a look at it, just in case you might mix up, say, Jack Frost with another Jack Frost. You will know which one it is.
We should just do both Jack Frost, but not label them or put like thumbnails, so you have to guess which one we're talking about.
So, any case, I'm hoping that we get a good participation. We had a great participation early on, and it looks like we do have at least some early voting, which is great. I hope that we did well. We had a great participation this past month, so thank you all who voted, and if you're listening. And of course, next week we'll be back to your voting with the Terminator. Arnold's first Terminator film.
Mm-hmm.
And I have spoken enough, so I guess it goes back to you, Dave.
Well, anyways, hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Streggy, and I am pretty much the grandfather of this podcast. But you know what? We all kind of run it ourselves.
We're all responsible.
We're all responsible for towing the line on this podcast. So, in any case, everyone has their certain elvish duties while we're getting ready for Christmas. So, but I also run my own channel called Delusions of Grandeur. And the last 2 days I've been in jury duty. Kind of boring, but so you haven't seen anything from me since last week. But I definitely have a couple more reviews to do on the American Horror Project, which I still have yet to do. And I also have a review eventually coming out of Death Toilet 2.
What?
Yeah.
I liked the first Death Toilet review. That was awesome.
Yeah, there was a death toilet, and for some reason, some guy with no budget has decided to make a couple of these movies, and I just ordered the Riverbed, and that's what I'm kind of waiting on. I'm waiting on the movie that came out before this guy sent me the screener for this one, so that I can review the Riverbed, and then go on and talk about that one. But I have a few other reviews to get out before that, hopefully before I go back into my work weekend. But unfortunately, jury duty kind of stamped some of my energy out for some of the week. So in any So definitely keep a lookout for some of those that will be coming out. I have since I went on to Brandon about this movie, I'm going on with our friend from Croatia tomorrow on Bunny the Killer Thing.
Well, that was interesting.
It was well. I had him watch it, and he's normal. Well, to me, if you don't know a whole lot of independent movies, that's one I'd start someone out with.
But to scare them, don't ever come back to it.
No, it'll be interesting tomorrow. So Boris and I will go on about Bunny the Killer Thing tomorrow at 1. So if anyone wants to tune in, going live then, and hopefully we'll have an interesting discussion. So
right.
we were supposed to have it Monday, but I forgot about my upcoming jury duty. So fun stuff.
Well, you've probably all gone insane at this point. But thanks for through all of our self-promotion. Like, share, and subscribe, and I think try to follow us on what is that podcast network we're on again?
Inside Movies.
Is it Podbean or
Anchor? We are actually an easier one for you to follow us, folks, is on Spotify.
We're on Spotify now.
Yeah, well, through Anchor. Anchor actually puts us on Spotify, and
cool.
At least 4 other podcast stuff. So I'll have to figure out the rest of that. Next up,
Fangoria Podcast Network. Probably not, because but we can dream.
Dream.
If you want to support the show, send Dustin $5 at.